together. And that was the first time. And so anthropologists who had always used audiovisual as part of their research, going right back to when Haddon first goes to Australia in the end of the 19th century. Even Malinowski took lots of photographs. We'd always had audio, well, we'd always had visual research, but this was the first time when we could have audio visual research. And this is really important because we are now really in the middle stages of a digital revolution. And our children now are using technologies that we cannot understand. And they are getting ahead of us, and we need to find some parity in what's going on in their lives and understand it so that we can bring to them our knowledge. So I'm going to come back again because those questions that they set out are very simple. And I think fundamentally, we want to know, are the children happy? Because if they're happy, they will grow. They will grow in the right direction, and they will start to learn in ways that are more comfortable for them. So we need to understand what is, because when I'm teaching at university, I see many unhappy young adults, and I want to also understand what's happened to make them unhappy. So what do you do with your life is a very important thing. Now, reading the go-between, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. So if you think that was Sync Sound, and this is a research project that I did in 2017, and this is what the children are up to now. I placed all of the houses that I planted here. I'm going to find the house. Oh, come on, the balls keep rolling off.
Look at each other. So look at him, yeah. One step here, and look at me, and look at him, okay? And at 3, clap your hands. 3, 2, 1, clap.
Can't see anything.
Ma'am, 1 sec. Are you using PowerPoint?
Can you see
or is it just audio? Or is it just audio, or are you just playing? Because I override your PowerPoint when I was sharing.
Sorry, say that again.
Are you sharing your PowerPoint? Or are you just letting us listen to the audio?
Oh, yeah, we need to see that. Hold on.
So you need to share again, because while I was sharing, I had to cancel your.
Sorry. Here we go. There you go. You see, this is a rookie error. Can you see now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
I placed all of the houses that I planted here. I'm going to find the house. Oh, come on, the balls keep rolling off.
Look at each other. So look at him, yeah. One step here, and look at me, and look at him, okay? And at 3, clap your hands. 3, 2, 1, clap.
Can't see anything. There's a house floating. Oh, there's a house floating on your ear. What's inside that? What the heck? What's that?
Can you see what's inside?
Yeah, I can see. Oh, wait.
Can you touch what's inside?
No, it's hologram. Oh my God. Hologram. That's these houses. Okay. So that was the beginning of virtual reality teaching. So in 60 years, from 1960 to 2017, we've gone from completely not even understanding what a microphone is to actually creating virtual worlds in which our children are now taking part in classes. And now, if you look at university education, there's a big push to the virtual classroom using VR and AR glasses. So here's the thing, how can we get children to reach their full potential? Richard Buckminster Fuller, a visionary, an architect, an educator, said, everyone is born a genius, but the process of living de-geniuses them. And we know this because disadvantaged pupils tend to have lower education attainment. We know that compared to their peers, they will have a disadvantage, and the COVID pandemic has likely widened this gap. They will have less access to technology, less time learning, and reduced support from their parents because their parents cannot give them the time, or maybe do not understand the school curriculum. So this classroom learning, remember, school education from a government perspective is always aimed at the masses. And money and funding has always gone towards facilities and teachers offering teaching in the classroom, in a physical space. But now, as we see from the advance in technology, the technology has gone beyond where educators are in the ability to actually deliver. And we saw this in during the pandemic. So pupils are already designing their own education as they learn the devices and they explore apps and games. Children are taking the initiative in a way, but we need to understand what these initiatives are, because we still need to monitor them. So this is my son talking about the thing he learns online.
Well, on a computer, I'm able to play games which can adapt to the computer, or it can just be an online game for everyone to play. So if it adapts to the computer, it means that it will save everything that you've done. So if it's like an online thing, it will, next time you go on the game, it will delete everything that you've done and it will start over. And some digital skills I know is fast typing. And I know if someone says, can you get this up, I'm most likely going to find it, because if they tell you what they want you to find and you type that up, there would normally be a couple hundred questions and saying, do you want this, do you want that, do you want this? So there'll be a lot of things that tell you, do you mean this? Is it this you want?
Okay, so that point that I want to make with that is that, yes, they're learning certain skills. My son will say he can type very quickly. He needs to learn to type quickly if he wants to play games with his older brother. Okay, so there's a motivation there to learn to type. These are skills that obviously are useful. But if you hear the second part of what he says there's a lot of suggestions. Do you want this? Do you want that? When he's looking through search engines, he's talking about the things he looks for. So if he looks up a certain word or an expression, or if he becomes to get curious online, there will be suggestions to take him down different rabbit holes. Now, how do we control that rabbit hole learning? We have to understand where they're going with this internet, because it's like throwing them into a jungle and not really giving them enough resources to say, well, this might be dangerous, this might be interesting, but we also want to encourage their curiosity. Here's another feedback of why my older son, he's 12, who thinks that he's learning things from the internet and from video games.
In Minecraft story mode, you are the character in the story. It's like doing a play. You are the character and you are the writer as well. So you make the decisions in the game.
Okay, so this is control. This child particularly likes to be in control of his learning. Actually, COVID for him was quite good because he doesn't like distraction in class. So there were some very interesting, good things from COVID in some way, as long as it was moderated and as long as you had access to a device. So which is something that we're going to be talking about. If you don't have access, what do you do? So children are learning things, they are being engaged in the learning process, but we as educators need to know exactly how they should curate that knowledge and if they can articulate it. So because pupils will need to adapt and engage in technology. It's not something that is a bad thing, but they need to be active learners and they need to be asking questions and seeking different sources of answers. And this is we'll talk about blended learning tomorrow, that it's not just, you can't find the answers for everything online, that some things need to be experienced without technology. So just given this context, the digital revolution became a reality as the internet for us in the 1990s, and some of us remember life very well before that. But as we know that when we were at school, we would be in the classroom and then we would go on visits to different places if we were lucky, to museums, to theatres, if we were near a city. And the whole idea of special needs, a support for children with different learning difficulties was really placed around the classroom or a one-to-one outside the classroom. My mother was a special needs teacher and she remembers very well going into small groups and taking literature and numeracy classes for those children. And most of them were not, some didn't have learning difficulties, but they often had social problems, so that they couldn't sit still in a classroom. But the material, we were looking at the material, and all our studies up until that point were really looking at the child in presentia. And this is where we need to step in now, because we need to think about what the next steps are. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that intelligence changes as children grow. And a child's cognitive development is not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about developing constructs, a mental model of the world. And those mental models need to be firm, and those mental models need to give stability to the child. And this is why we need to question where their mental models are coming from. Would you like, Dr. Zhimo, would you like to show a little bit about one of the experiments of Piaget way back in the 50s?
Okay, you ready? Yeah. Okay. Does this row have more quarters? Does this row have more quarters, or do they have the same?
1, 2, 3. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're both the same.
They're the same?
5, 5.
Okay. Okay. Does this row have more quarters? Does this row have more, or do they have the same?
This one has more.
That one has more quarters?
Yeah.
Why does this row have more quarters?
Because it's more far away.
It's more far away?
Yeah, it's like more far away than like that. Looks like bigger.
Okay, thank you. Stop, thank you. I'll go back to share. So the interesting thing I found with that particular extract, I'll give you links to watch the whole thing. But what's really interesting, these are physical building tests. These were tactile tests, and the child constantly, I don't know if you notice, but the child is constantly looking at the teacher for approval, for recognition of the thought. She's using her hands, she's using body language, she's reading body language. And this is a really interesting, let's say, an observation, because when my children were learning online during the lockdown, they had no teacher directly to show any body language. They didn't have affirmation of any thought. They weren't reading anybody else's language or body language. They weren't learning social skills while they were learning knowledge. They were doing one or perhaps the other. But because there was relatively little face-to-face with the teachers, the child or different children that we noticed, that we discussed with, they were getting very anxious. They were getting very frustrated because the child needed that eye contact while they were while they were learning. So we're not just building mental worlds at acquiring knowledge like a machine learning activity like AI. We are humans who need emotional backup. We need emotional connections while we're learning. So we need dialogic. We need corporeal learning. We need a material base and foundation. We need to be in person, and we need to combine conceptual worlds with social worlds.
Well, making cake.
So this is my son talking about making a pizza online in a video game and making a cake at home with in person.
Well, making cakes is it's easier in digital world, and it's really fun. But I think and it's fun because you can like put whatever you want. You can put toppings in. You don't have to like wait for a timer to go off or something. And in the real world, it's more fun because you can do it with your family, and it's fun because you're not you can actually use your hands instead of just using your hands on a keyboard.
Okay, so he's recognized the difference between making a cake with a keyboard, and I see this a lot. Children are playing these games where they're making cakes, they're making pizzas, which is all lovely, but that will never substitute completely the real thing. And the one thing he says is you can do it with your family. You can do these things together. Now, obviously, online gaming, you have big families of people who play video games, but it's a different style, it's a different technique, and one cannot substitute the other. So before disruption, mental models of the world were constructed in real time, among others who inhabited the same physical space. We used our senses, and interpersonal relations were tried and tested. I don't know about any of your experiences. I'd be really interested to know. But when I was talking to children who had been in lockdown for several months, they found social relations very difficult. And in fact, many of them had got used to not really interacting properly with other people. Lots of sort of anxieties about going out again, and also the idea that they can get everything they want by a touch of the button. Why bother going out to talk to people in person? But we know that playgrounds and places where children play together, they obviously in safe spaces, even if school is not the perfect environment for many people, that is something that we've experienced, and we can actually help children get through some of those problems in school. But because we didn't grow up in the digital space, it's very difficult for us to understand how to help children emotionally and also during their lessons, because we did not learn like that. So there's a big generational problem. So as the 21st century settled in, we see other purveyors of information. It's not just teachers who are giving knowledge. It's not just parents. It's computer-led media outlets. Remember when email came in? Remember the amount of times we got things wrong with email? Well, we answered something far too quickly and we sent it off, and we thought we shouldn't be sending this off. It hasn't been thought out. And emailing, the culture of email has become really insidious in some institutions, and used as, you know, in all sorts of ways that that really it's quite a labyrinth to understand even how the email culture works in professional lives. So how is a child supposed to email their teacher? What is this, you know, what is this social relationship that has never been explored before between pupil and master? You know, how do we address those different hierarchies through social media, through email? And once YouTube was launched in 2005, we cannot remember now almost a time before YouTube, but YouTube has given so much information, but how do we know our children are watching the right things? I mean, the statistics with YouTube, I won't go through them all here. I'll give you these as well afterwards. But if you see from, you know, the first YouTube video in 2005 to March 2013, YouTube was seeing 1 billion monthly active users. 70% of YouTube comes through our mobile phones. The average mobile viewing session lasts about 40 minutes. So a lot of our attention is going into this audio visual material. How are we curating this for our children? So I'll give you those statistics, they're quite long. So from 2005, anyone with internet access could enter a new digital world, and no matter who they were. Textual, video and audio came to seep into not just workspace, and then they came to home space. So work and home suddenly became a blurred boundary. So for fieldwork methods, from an anthropological point of view, where is work? Where is home? These two worlds had combined, especially during COVID. And children are often a lot quicker at this technology than their parents, especially when it comes to mobile phone activities. But they developed all these skills, but what do they know? Often I'm testing my children on very basic facts that I would have thought they should know, they have not grasped yet. So during the global pandemic, we've had a fast forward in digital education. We had to all suddenly understand how Zoom works, and sharing screens and all these things. Now, just before the pandemic, the UK government put out this big report and telling us what children should be able to do by the time they leave school. And these 5 essential skills are communicating, this is via digital, via the internet, handling information and content, transacting, problem solving, being safe and legal online. So these are the government sort of outward facing instructions, policies that, you know, filter into national curriculums here. This is what they want students to learn. But I have not seen a lot of discernible material in their class to actually address these issues. And where is the gold standard? This is what I'm asking. So around 1/5 of the UK population do not have digital skills, these digital skills. And we know that those who do have qualifications at school, the 2020 index says that 93% of university degree students will have these skills for life, whereas 34%, which is 1/3 of the population, will not. And this is UK, where everyone has access to education, and there's a lot of support. Now, what was interesting is that when we all went into lockdown, or even just before, when children are given a few of these interactive digital access classes that they've done, you know, for homework, they were given a few things online, testing their maths online. You can obviously, as you all know, you can enter into these different classrooms online. But there was no real framework for children about how to go about digital learning. So the first digital course really wasn't until 2012 here at the beginning of adult education in the UK. They began to offer distance learning, what we called in the Open University, and that was in conjunction with the BBC, which was always seen as an education and entertainment source, and we pay for that through our taxes. The BBC has a license that we all pay for, so it's led by the people. But the Open University established in 1969 the first online courses, and these were supposed to go to really support adult learning, people who'd missed out as a child and they really wanted to become a teacher or something. So they did these in their own time, and they occasionally met with the teachers on site, but it was usually a distance learning, and you could do this all abroad. So the first online program was launched in 1985, but after 1995, the dot-com held its first completed doctoral student. So 1995 was the first time that somebody had actually completed an online degree course. And then we went into e-learning, and many of us remember this from university life, the e-learning and what we know as MOOCs, the massive open online courses, first opened by MIT in 2012. But MOOCs also had their problems. And here is Nyema Moshiri talking about how online courses did not necessarily deliver for the adult, remember. So I'm just using a comparison here for the adult. I wonder, Dr. Zhimo, could you share that from 7 minutes 28 in?
Ability to substitute a real class. And to kind of exemplify this, I did an experiment of sample size 1, which was just me, where I wanted to see Coursera, one of the main platforms of online learning, had this new certificate program. And I decided, you know what, this certificate seems meaningless to me. I want to prove that it's actually a meaningless certificate. So I enrolled in what's considered one of the best Stanford-hosted online courses through Coursera, which is the machine learning course. And my goal was to finish this course to full completion without actually learning anything in the class. And my solution to this was I just fast forwarded through all the lecture videos, clicked massively on all the multiple choice questions, and then for the programming challenges, I just used basic linear algebra knowledge to rearrange equations and eventually get the answer. And I was able to successfully complete this 11-week course in 5 days, getting 100% of the class without actually learning anything. So I'm not saying that the course is bad. If you want to learn machine learning, you can learn it from this course. But this certificate that you get when you complete it is clearly not a very meaningful thing. And you can't have it replace the traditional diploma, because a diploma needs to infer, it has to imply some set of skills that you've mastered. So in my opinion, we're not at that stage yet that we can just replace replace university classes with online.
Okay, thank you. There's just a short one. I'll give you links to watch all these properly. So I hope my point is made there that, let me share again. I hope my point is made there that these learning platforms that we have even made for adults are not foolproof. That they can be abused, and just relying on online for everything is not the way forward. So when we offer courses at university to adults, these are the kind of things that we put up there to attract students. User-friendly, easy to navigate, study at your own pace, time to familiarize learning resources, course overview, reminders for deadlines, tutor feedback, guidance, and assistance with technical resources. That these are aimed at adults, 18-year-olds. But then I asked myself, what were the guidelines from teachers to parents? And what training did teachers and educators receive? What about the special needs and children who did not have devices? All of these problems were suddenly exacerbated during lockdown, because no one had any in training and no one had come up with any guidelines for how children should use the internet, apart from the safe and legal, put a lock on your internet if we don't want any inappropriate material. But that's always, that's been there for a while, but nothing specific. And for example, when my younger child, who was only 8 at the time, could not sit in front of the screen for hours. He could not do it. He did not want to do it. And he rebelled big time. And we almost had, mental breakdowns in our house. I had 4 children at home with 4 different specific learning needs. And as a mother and a teacher, I thought, what's going on? Why aren't there any more guidelines for parents and mothers for having nervous breakdowns? So in contrast with adult online from university, it really seemed to be a big turning point as everybody began to face the same problem. What are we going to do with teaching our children at home online? Now, this is a report from Learning During Lockdown in Real Time in the May 2020. And this was this was right at the beginning, pretty much 3 months in. The transition to home learning will be a disruption, of course. This is like wartime footing. We knew it was going to be difficult. However, we don't know to what extent it will be harmful. For policy makers seeking to balance the public benefits of the lockdown with the economic and educational concerns, the idea is that we did not know what the effects were going to be, and no one gave any guidelines about how long, what you should do if certain behaviors were happening. And these are the findings from that report, that primary and secondary students spend about 5 hours a day. However, secondary school in Britain is from 11 years to 18 years. So most likely the children were learning online for 5-6 hours a day, and then they were playing online for 5-6 hours a day. Higher income parents obviously are much more likely to provide better spaces to learning. Tell us something we didn't know. Of course, 64% of secondary pupils from the richest household were given basic education. The poorest, a fifth of families did not have very good access or anything. So we're talking over a half of the poorest families in Britain did not have the proper resources. So the disparity between the rich and the private school learning and the poor of the poorest state schools, there was an absolute, the digital divide grew and grew. Children from better off families spent 30% more time with talking about learning. Again, tell us something we didn't know. Children in the highest income fifth of families spent 5.8 hours. And we're talking hours and hours of difference in time, which is completely different from the kind of public school learning that we've all been used to over the last millennium, really. People go on, not millennium, but at least 100 years. Many parents of both primary and secondary reported finding it difficult. They were finding it very hard to support their children's learning because not everybody's a teacher. And so they knew that when they were going to open after lockdown, higher income parents were being made to support more. The risk and the situation of children struggling the most to cope with home learning remains, harder for people without obviously the space and the time and the individual attention that their richer counterparts will have. So how can we help? What can we do as anthropologists? And there's quite a lot of studies about anthropology and education, but there are not many studies about anthropology in education. And the proposal here is that I hope I'm doing okay for time, but I wanted to get through some of this first because I know you're going to be showing some films next. And then in the last session, one of my students actually took up some of these ideas and has made a film that we're going to see. So we'll look at, so first of all, before we pick up a film camera, just normal fieldwork advice that we give to students going into the field. Because when you learn a new language or study a new culture on its own terms, you're becoming an anthropologist. You're constructing other mental landscapes or even new worlds which challenge your concepts and ideas. And this is something that you have to be a good teacher, to understand where children are coming from. You have to be open to different mental worlds and emerging worlds and worlds that are not particularly well articulated, because these are children. And we have to think often like an anthropologist, because what's just happened, the cultural other are now our children. The way anthropologists have been trained has prepared us in a way for this cultural change. So we're used to seeing people in other cultural situations. We're used to trying to adapt. We have certain skills, and so here's a little film just to put that point together in an Alice in Wonderland way. I think I can play this just from here. Let me try. Can you see this?
Anthropology is a very strange discipline, because in most subjects like history or chemistry or whatever it is, you go and study objects out there and it doesn't really change you as a person. They are the past or your experiments. In anthropology, the whole point was you went out to a magical land. When you go to a tribal society like the Nagas or Island New Guinea, you enter a magical world, which is something like our childhoods, rather like Alice through the looking glass.
Okay, I'll stop there. So I made a little film, and that was part of it. There was a part of going to another culture. You become like a child. You have to see things on their own terms, and you are non-judgmental like children are usually. So how can ethnography help? A distinction between anthropology and education. So anthropology is the discipline, as we know, and ethnography is the method. So the ethnographic method here is experience. As an anthropologist, you live within the constructs of this other culture or world. The participant observation method means that you do not only experience a different way of life, you take part in it and you make notes on observations for further analysis. So here are some points that I put together that I will share with you quite happily to talk about how do we record data about children. So when we're going into that other culture. So here are some kind of sort of points that I would really like to discuss further, maybe in questions. We ask and gain written permission. Of course, we go through all the ethical procedures. We ask permission from them. We ensure the children are safe, and we ensure anonymity if necessary. We do not film children just like that. We cover all aspects of safety and guardian guidelines. So we spend time with the children in physical or virtual classes, and we make sure, obviously, that if we're with them, we make sure we're with somebody else as well. We have someone from the institution with us when we're learning about children. We do not just go in on our own. We explain whatever we want to do, whatever activity, you saw the Piaget methods, but whatever activity that we want to do that will hold a research question, we must explain in simple language. We have to understand that children need simple, clear guidelines, and we ask them to participate. We create activities that will be appropriate for the age group. We participate and observe individual and group activity. We create space for the child to voice opinions and create presentations. We show the child what we have found and we ask them to respond. So we treat them as we would any other culture. We do not suddenly think that we can take over their thought process or that we can talk for them, or that, and we do not pay them. We do not reward them. Not even with a lolly. No, we keep it very separate. Obviously, we have fun activities and hopefully the children will engage. But, you might want to work with a primary school teacher if you're with younger children. You might want to devise things. Take lessons from the educators if you've got your research question, but we need to get in there. If you're working with children online, learn their games, learn what they're doing, because only by understanding how they're learning, and they will tell you, but you need to take time to understand that and do it over a period of time. If it's not your own children, you need to understand the networks, the frameworks that they're working in, and then you can assess. So the next one is the translation. As anthropologists, we're used to translating. You become a translator of culture and you understand concepts on their own terms within the constructs of the world you are studying. So how do we translate information? We explain the context of the study to the child. We do not change children's verbal expressions, even if they're grammatically incorrect. We ask the children to show before asking them to tell. We encourage participation and make activities short. We don't sort of give them long processes, short and sweet, especially online. We do not speak for them, but encourage them to say and demonstrate their knowledge. Present visual, oral and kinesthetic activities. So we don't just ask a child to look at a maths question online, and if he doesn't understand it, then he's an idiot or whatever. You then take it to the paper, you then take it to the blocks, you then take it. So the child is getting different forms of learning. It's not just saying that if they're not quick enough online that they're not keeping up with the group, because some children will never learn things online as well as they'll learn it in another space, and vice versa, So we ask the child their preferred platforms of expression, analog or digital. And this is where we start to gain some insight into what things we think are appropriate to teach online and what things we think might be better to teach offline. We do not give over to this platform. We control it. So as an anthropologist, you act as an interpreter. You can explain why people do different things according to their rules, rituals, and beliefs, but you make no judgment. So when we're interpreting information, context is king. We described what happened, what went on before. We give a narration. We learn to storytell, but we attempt to understand from the child's point of view. For example, would you, age 8, want to have sat at a computer for 5 hours a day? Really? Is that something that you would have liked to do? Why do we expect it of our children just because it's lockdown? We collaborate with teachers and primary carers about child's response to on and off, and we consult anthropological and other studies. Margaret Mead has done many studies in children. There's lots of Ruth Benedict has done many, even more contemporary anthropologists have done a lot. Sarah Pink has done a lot of interesting anthropology on the digital world, but also using methodologies like walking and talking and things like that, which are very natural, organic ways of learning. And we use our common sense, we use our discretion, and we use empathy. And so if you want to collaborate, we know that these are very strong skills to have in the workplace. And so the collaboration as a presentation of research is something that we should do with the child, and ask the child to take charge of the activity. It's not something that we lead all the time. The children need to lead too. And we ask roles of the task. So we change roles if we're in a group. Not everybody is going to be the film director all the time. Sometimes they're going to be the, something else, or play in different roles, so we can ascertain what the child is good at doing. Is the child a good supporter of a network or a team activity? Is the child a good leader? When are they a good leader? And only when we get this situation where the child is comfortable in the space will we get them to open to attain knowledge, database knowledge, for example. But so we ask for other voices to come in, the parents' voices, grandparents. We're always neglecting the older generation's knowledge in our digital worlds. Our elderly counterparts across the world have millions of data, megabytes of knowledge that children could be recording, children could be asking questions of, that we don't really give the older generation that access because they're not very quick on the internet. But we must bring them in to the discussion. And create good communication between our groups. So we're here, we have a class group on WhatsApp groups for the mothers. So when the children were having problems during lockdown, the mothers got together. I organized a tennis group, and this was a really good way to bring structure into the lockdown, because we were allowed to play tennis, we were allowed to go for a walk, even if we were separate, we couldn't get very close to people. So we could make mini groups, mini ethnographies. And I was told over the last year that it was the only time that the child got out of bed was to come to play tennis, and then they would study online, but they wouldn't study online before they'd done a physical activity, which is something that we've always had to do at school. We've always had to do physical activity. So we cannot expect children to just be online all day. Anyway, so there's a whole load here I won't go into because I know I'm going over time. So we use different approaches and methods, and we don't expect children to sit down too long, and we have a selection of activities. So I think just to finish off, Dr. Zhimo, I would like to just introduce the David McDougall's project in Delhi that he did a few years ago, where he empowered children by giving them the camera. And this was called The Child's Eye. And it went to a series of schools in Delhi. And this is a nice quote: if you want to teach people a new way of being, don't bother to try to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the use of which will give them new ways of thinking. And I think that the ethnographic tool here, in many ways, I won't go through this because we're going over time, is the camera. So this was a project that was conducted by David McDougall with various teachers in Delhi, and they came from different backgrounds, they came from different areas, rural and city-based, and the children were all around age 11, and they made some films, and there were about 12 films I think made, maybe 16 films by children, and they were shown basic skills of the camera, and then they went off and made a film of their own. So I'm going to leave this lecture in the voice of the children. If you could possibly start Delhi at 11, and then I'd be open for questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for such insightful lecture. And I'm sure there must be many questions since we're running late.
Richa, hang on. There's just one thing that I'm going to share.
Just watch Delhi at 11 and then finish. Thank you very much. Sorry.
दिखाऊंगी और लड़के किस तरह से उन्हें डांटते हैं और खुद खेलने चले जाते हैं, खुद पढ़ते हैं और उन्हें पढ़ने के लिए मना करते हैं, इस तरह की चीजें दिखाऊंगी.
ठीक है.
वरना चोट लग जाती है इसलिए। अच्छा तुम लोगों को नहीं लगेगी? नहीं हम मर्द लोग ना हिम्मत वाले होते मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता। लेडीज को किसने बोला मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता? क्योंकि मर्द में जान अमिताभ बच्चन ने ना यार। अच्छा अमिताभ बच्चन की बात अलग है, आपकी बात अलग है ना, क्योंकि मर्द ना लोड सहता है और औरत नहीं सहती इसलिए। हाँ हाँ वो घर का जो काम करती है वो तो अलग बात है। और क्या लड़के नहीं करते और आदमी नहीं करते? तो सिर्फ लड़के नहीं करती।
मैं अपनी मौसी के घर गई थी ना, तो मेरे भैया ने ना मुझसे पानी मंगवाया था। मैं एक लड़की के साथ भाग रही थी तो मुझे धक्का लगा और मेरे को चोट भी लग गई थी। और मैं जब पानी लेके आई ना तो मेरे भैया ने और भी ऊपर से डांटा मेरी, उसमें फिर भी मेरी कोई भी गलती नहीं थी, तब भी मेरे को डांट पड़ी और पिटाई भी लगी और दवाई भी नहीं लगाया। इतना दाग भी बन गया है, मेरे को दवाई नहीं लगाई थी मेरे भैया ने और मेरे को बहुत डांटा था, मारा भी था। मम्मी मेरे भाई को ज़्यादा प्यार करती है, मेरे को कम प्यार करती है। मुझे ऐसा लगता है ना, क्योंकि मेरे भाई को कम काम करने के लिए कहते हैं, मेरे को ज़्यादा, और बोलती है कि लड़कों के साथ नहीं खेलना चाहिए क्योंकि गंदे होते हैं इसलिए। और मैं जैसी पढ़ाई करने बैठती हूँ तो मेरी मम्मी बोलती है पहले झाड़ू लगा दे फिर खेलियो। उसको जब सुबह उठाते हैं तो प्यार से उठाते हैं। मेरे को एक बार कह देती है कि उठ जा, तो मैं उठ जाती हूँ। मेरे को प्यार नहीं करता। पापा करते मेरे को, मम्मी नहीं करती है। मम्मी कुछ भी नहीं करती है। मम्मी से मैं पैसे मांग लेती तो मम्मी नहीं देती है, पापा मेरे को देते हैं। लड़कियां नहीं खेल सकती। क्यों लड़के क्यों नहीं खेल सकती? लड़कियों को कुछ खेलना नहीं आता। क्यों नहीं आता? ये लड़की को तो आ जाएगा उनको भी। लड़कियां नहीं खेल सकती। लड़की नहीं खेल सकती। मेरी मम्मी ने इतना मारा, कभी कहती झाड़ू लगा तो कभी कहती है पोछा लगा। तो उसी वजह से मार मार के मेरा अंगूठा काट दिया। और मेरा भाई, और जब मैं पहनने को कहती हूँ, मैं बोलूँगी मम्मी से, मम्मी मुझे ये पहनना है, तो बोलती है कि सूट और फ्रॉक ही पहनना हो। मेरे भाई को मन चाहे जो पहने, उसे जो भी पहनेगा उसे तो कोई डांटेगा ही नहीं। मुझे खाली फ्रॉक और सूट, जिससे मुझे बेहद नफरत है। सूट तो थोड़ा बहुत अच्छा लगता है, फ्रॉक इतना घटिया। और मम्मी इतना डांटती, कभी कहती कपड़े धो, तो कभी कहती ये करो। मुझे इस घर का नौकर समझ रखा है, जब तक डांटती रहेगी और मेरे भाई को सब कुछ करना। जादू था ना, मारती रहेगी, चिल्लाती रहेगी, झाड़ू लगा, पोछा लगा, ये कर वो कर, ऐसे करते करते मेरा तो कमर भी टूट जाता है। मेरी भी तो जान है, सबकी जान है तो मेरी भी जान है। और ऐसा कर मुझे जब भी मारती रहती है। अब मेरी दीदी को तो कुछ नहीं कहेगी। पानी नहीं आ रहा, पानी मुझसे खींचना पड़ा। मेरा भाई तो खेल रहा है। आंटी ये ना पानी के घर गई। क्या दियो? भैया कैसे देख रही? और मैडम
So that was filmed all by there were no adults there. There was a child filming her world, and these were put together. So I will give you some access to this project if anybody's interested. Okay, well, I'll stop now because I think you've got other people to show, and I hope some of the messages have come through. I hope it's been at least not too boring for you to watch. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for such an insightful lecture. And like since we are running late, so I'll take 2-3 questions. If there are any questions, kindly unmute yourself, or you can drop. Yes,
Richa, we can take the questions on the last session because Alison ma'am has agreed to take questions, and then we can now proceed to panel discussion. Okay. Thank you, Richa.
Thank you. So now we move to next session, the panel discussion, Voices from the Field, which will be chaired by Dr. Chakraverti Mahajan. Well, many of us know him. He's a dynamic faculty in the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi, and has many achievements. And the very recent one is he's selected for the Charles Wallace Fellowship, Queen's University, Belfast. So this is a very brief about him. So now I request Sir to take over the virtual. Sir,
Thank you, Richa. Thank you very much. Sorry for my poor video quality, but yeah, it was. I could attend, first half of Alison's lecture and the last one, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Alison, for putting everything in perspective. And I think now these 4 short presentations in form of a panel, I think they'll take us into other directions. So I think these are voices which are coming straight away from field, and we will have a good chance of engaging with these presentations, which my colleagues Suniti, Harmeet, Neha, and Janice, they are going to take us to their field locations and their, and to areas where they are doing a lot of work. So we are already running a little late, and let me invite Suniti for her presentation. Suniti, Suniti, again, she's an assistant professor of anthropology at Delhi University, and today she will talk about her work on autism. I invite Suniti now. Thank you, Suniti.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Dr. Avitoli, for inviting me for this lecture. And I hope I'll be able to do justice to what has been expected from this presentation. So a very good evening to all. And I'll just share my slides with you. So the work that I'm going to present today is basically what I have mentored, and the work has been initiated by 2 school students from India. Now they've passed their standard 12th. Now one of them has already joined for a graduate program in US, and another one has already joined program in Canada. So what the idea behind this project was to actually address the assessment of autism in India. Autism is just not one disease; it is an autism spectrum disorder. So autism is something which has a strong cultural bond to it. Why? Because the assessment of autism should be done at a very young age, and in Indian context, it is generally delayed because most of the tools that are there for assessment of ASD, autism spectrum disorder, they are administered by trained professionals, and they are mostly available at the tertiary care centers and not at the primary or the secondary care centers. And by the time this child reaches the school and starts showing the developmental delays, so therein the child is assessed, and after the implementation of making a child passing a child until the standard 8 under right to education, these developmental delays are not addressed properly. So that is one reason that children with developmental delays, they are passed on to primary classes and so. So by the time they pass their school and all, or they drop out from the school, these problems are not addressed. So we had to actually come up with a culturally adapted risk assessment tools that could actually screen the children at their own place and in their natural settings. And so that we can provide equity through the digital means in India. Now that digitalization has happened, most of the people have an access. Most of the people or their near and dear ones or our healthcare providers specifically, they have access to digital means. So why not use that and make this technology or tools, to reach at the primary care center. So the basic background behind this was that we could see that ASD affects almost 1 in 100 children in India, and it is affected by regional practices and the social norms. So ASD has a strong culture specific assessment when it comes to developmental milestones. So with respect to that, the tools are not so functional when it comes to cultural settings. So in terms of implementing the Western diagnostic measures, such contexts are not relevant in Indian diversity. There are issues with respect to the interpretation, the translation, and the perception of behaviors. There is a model which says that the interpretation of developmental delays or interpretation of developmental activities that a child does are related to different. They have different cultural contexts. Say, for example, a study conducted in US attributed development of verbal attributes to be more important, whereas in the same study they have addressed that in Indian context it is more about the social attributes, how much the child speaks, how many people can the child identify, or some or attributes that link to the social behavior of the child. So in different cultural contexts, the behavior changes, and hence interpretation of that behavior with respect to developmental delays is also altered. So there are cross-cultural differences in the autistic traits. So if an Indian child goes to US and gets assessed if an Indian child gets assessed with respect to the Western tools, it may not be that feasible. So there is a specific tool in Indian context, that is ISA, which is for Indian children. However, there are certain flaws with the tool. Of course, the tool is used by professionals, but when it comes to assessing at primary care or secondary care, there are little flaws with that. So children of varied development or the physical activities or educational development, they are not accommodated. The linguistic diversity, the cultural diversity, these diversities are not accommodated in the tools. So these are the standard tools though, but administered only at the tertiary care. So the next thing with the digitalization is the gamification. So there is a strong component, strong relation between the developmental of visual attributes in a child prior to the development of verbal attributes. So why not use the visual aids to assess autism or ASD at a younger age or much earlier than the normal age? In India, the normal age at which ASD is detected is almost 8 to 10 years by the time the child already reaches class 2nd or class 3rd. So we have to catch them young, catch them early. So for that, digital methods are the strongest methods. So gamification of ASD diagnosis, it has slightly been explored, but not much explored. So culturally adapted tools in India are almost negligible. There is only one tool that was developed by England Trust and which is not widely used, which is not at all used by the clinicians. So somehow we have to bridge the gap between the cultural diversity in India, cultural linguistic diversity in India, and the screening tools. So combining both of these in light of DSM-5 guidelines that are for autism. So this bridging is required. The convergence between the technology, the assessment tools, and people has to be done. So this tool, which is AUTIST, it is a culturally adapted risk assessment game tool for ASD. This was developed under DST initiative, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, in a PPP mode. And the IPR actually belongs to 2 school students, as I mentioned earlier. And I had mentored them to develop this, this app. It's basically an app that can assess a child's developmental delay. So the need was basically to address the cultural variables and use certain storylines that are based in those cultures. Say, for example, if you come to North India, there would be Panchtantra, which is generally recited at younger ages. Elders of the family would say stories to the kids, bedtime stories to the kids. They'll tell the stories. So these kind of stories, and if you go down south, there are different stories that are being are bedtime stories. So these are one thing. This is one aspect. The other aspect is the language barrier. So if the tool is administered in a different language, and the person to whom, or the child who is being monitored for developmental delay he has a different language, mother tongue. So there will be a language barrier. Again, the child may score different on that tool, that screening tool. So pictorial representations are the best ones for it. So the possible solution was for the pictorial representations. The other was the other aspect is children who have verbal disabilities, or children with certain verbal issues. So they cannot perform very well when the standard tools are administered. So minimally verbal or pre-verbal tools have to be developed. So other thing is children who have hearing impairment. So for that also pictorial representations are best. Now, when you administer a test, there are certain, for these behavioral tests, there are tests, the children do not find them interesting. So audio-visual games have to be developed, something of that sort. So we had to come up with a lot of question answers during the app development, and to culturally adapt them so that they can be placed in different contexts, and it can be used easily by a non-trained person or an unprofessional person who has not been trained in psychology. So because this is an automated thing, so the scores have already been put in or fed in the app. So this score would ultimately come in. We can catch the children early, those who have developmental delays. So a scalable, reliable, and validated pre-diagnostic. So this is not for diagnosis, but for screening or risk assessment. So once a child has been assessed for the risk of ASD, the parents can intervene, or the nearest family members or the primary care center people can intervene, and they can refer the child, or they can take the child, parents can take the child to a tertiary care center wherein the child can be thoroughly diagnosed using the standard tools such as ISA. So for this, first of all, we had to actually develop this app in terms of pictorial representation. So using Panchtantra as one of the modes. So the pictorial representations were made, and only animals or pictures of animals were used to develop this app, for the the storyline, to develop the storyline. So this could address the inconsistency across cultural and socio-economic backgrounds, and keeping DSM-5 guidelines in mind. So this app was developed. So even untrained people can administer it, wherein the child can perform naturally in the home environment or the school environment. So if a child has to be taken to a clinic, the child behaves differently. So if the child is sitting at home or in school, so this app can be used to screen them for ASD. So it is a child-centered game-based app. So this could be used for screening of ASD. So almost 60 plus literatures were screened across all the zones in India, North, West, East, and South. And the stories in 22 languages were screened, and each story was attributed its its score based on the pictorial version, the graphics, the emotions, the social relationships. So, and the religious traits, the social context of it. And a few examples of it have been shown here in the slide. So all out of these, we started with Panchtantra, say for example, because both the students who had developed this app, so they knew the baseline of Panchtantra. One was located in North India in Kanpur and the other was in Kolkata. So they could easily do it with Panchtantra. So started with Panchtantra. So problem was identified, the folklore was identified, and a storyline based on Panchtantra was already identified. So this app had to be simplified into pictorial representations and pictorial representations from Panchtantra, and then a story was made. So based on ISA, there were 6 domains: social relationship and reciprocity of the child, the emotional responsiveness of the child, the speech, language and communication, behavioral patterns, sensory aspects, and cognitive components. So these 6 components are ISA's main domains to diagnose ASD. So these 6 components were thoroughly practiced into the app. So after the graphic designing and the development of the app, Panchtantra app was put into the storyline, and then it was tested in 2 zones in India. Okay. So to test, we had a case group and a control group. Case group included, first of all, the app was given to the professionals, the trained professionals who are psychiatrists. So they were given. So 2 groups were chosen for the professionals, and they were given this questionnaire, and they had actually told that this app was, along with the app, the questionnaire was given as, and they had actually, come up with the idea that the app is much easy to use, and it is actually similar to kind of, what ISA comes up with. So the test runs were done at 2 places. One is in Kolkata, the other is in Kanpur, and this was done during the lockdown period. So already, and children with ASD, they were called in at their respective places and respective centers, and therein they were tested with the app as well as the standard ISA tool. So control group of unaffected children was also taken, that ranged from 7 to 11 years, whereas the case group, that is the ASD children, they ranged in the age group 6 to 10 years. So the experiments were conducted virtually by the administrators under the supervision of a trained professional, how to run an app and all. So positive controls were taken those who were already diagnosed with ASD, and their ISA scores cards were already available. And the app scores were collated with that. And in the 4 categories, that is the emojis, unwanted clicks, response delay, and observer questionnaire. So the risk scores in these 4 categories were calculated. So this is a brief background as to what the questionnaire was about and how the results were there. So if you see this part of the graph, so there was domain based on the ISA and comparison with the app results, there were little differences, and this app could actually, almost kind of in the similar range, assess what ISA also determines. So if you see the results between one-way and ANOVA results between the app results and the traditional tool, that is ISA results, and they were not significantly different. So all this under all these 6 domains, so we could say that the app is pretty good and has a good sensitivity and specificity afterwards when we calculated it further. So overall, the rubric score for or test was done for all the 4 criteria that were taken, and children were scored based on that. And similarly, the questionnaire was developed, and the professionals were also interviewed as to how many times the child smiled while playing, because that is about responsiveness of the child, and how the child was playing during the app was being during the storyline was being played on the app or not. So whether the child was hyperactive or not, because all these domains are being captured under the ISAT. The trial run was done and accuracy of 91% was achieved. Sensitivity was, this sensitivity was pretty good. Specificity was 100%, wherein there was no false negative, false positive or the false positive or the false negative. So the specificity was 100%, the predictive value positive was 100%, the negative predictive value was again almost 94%. So based on these, we could identify that this score, this tool can be used as a screening tool or maybe the risk assessment tool in general. So the most important part of it was identifying a storyline, giving it a graphical touch, how and use emojis, use pictures of animals, and with different expressions. In anger, we had to use different expressions on the animal pictures, and when they were smiling, we had to give a different angle to it. So these were the things that we had to do it. The other thing was give it a cultural outlook. So the next was the Tenali Raman. So that now the phase for the next storyline has started up, and the next is going to be that, because ASD is something which has to do with behavior, and behavior of a child would change, and perception of those viewing that behavior would also change. So these three things have to be collated and synchronized before anything of this digital method has to come up. If, for example, Panchtantra is administered to a child, to a 5-year-old child or a 6-year-old child who stays somewhere down south, who has never heard of Panchtantra. Okay. So the child would not even react to the app. Child would not even proceed with the entire screening. So that is where this cultural adaptation has to be put in such tools, in such apps, or maybe any screening tool that comes up with screening of with factors such as behavior. So they have to be culturally placed. So this is an important thing which is to be considered when all these things, when digital mediums are used, digital methods are used, plus we are using it in diverse conditions. So all these things have to be synchronized. Then only can we reduce the burden, the gap between unprivileged people and the so-called privileged people. And the convergence between the technology and the screening tools and the healthcare system, this has to be there. So in the conclusion, I would say, with respect to this this app that was developed based, keeping in mind the cultural adaptation of the storyline, the first thing was that professionals, with respect to the results of their professional questionnaires, that they rated that each domain was effective, and behavioral patterns and emotional responsiveness could be easily assessed. So because it was more child-centric. With respect to the test runs that case and control groups were screened for, the risk score were almost similar. Accuracy was 92%, which means it needs further refinement, but 92% is pretty high. So it has promising psychometric properties. So there's a scope of improvement since the accuracy can be improved. The other is when more storylines would be incorporated on it, any person, parent, or a healthcare provider can choose the module or the storyline based on their storylines or based on their culture. Next is the next plan is phased expansion, wherein we will be expanding it to 4 zones. Then the framework would be to develop newer culturally appropriate ASD intervention tools, ASD diagnostic tools. So this tool or this app, once it is there, once the IPR is patented, so this can be used as a screening tool for children having developmental delays, because developmental delay is something which is children with developmental delay, they would behave a little different or slower than the normal children or children who are normal in their development. So easily it cannot be assessed, but yes, with constant monitoring, one gets to know that the child has a developmental delay. However, initially, specifically in Indian context, there's an inbuilt behavior of ignoring the developmental delays. So the child would be diagnosed or would be assessed for developmental delays only when the child reaches the school. That is where when the child stops, child ceases to perform good in the academics. So that is where the child is screened. It is not, the child is not screened before that. So that is more important. So because currently at that level, at community level, parents are not really aware. Unprivileged children, or I can say children or parents who are not educated, parents who do not have access to healthcare or tertiary care centers. So they do not really know as to whom to go to and where to go. So if we strengthen our primary centers or ASHA workers or Anganwadi workers, say Anganwadi workers, because they have access to the children. Children come and play at the Anganwadi centers in India. So if we train our Anganwadi centers, so they can be a huge workforce that can help us in converging the three domains, three areas, and reduce the burden of delay diagnosis of autism in India, because earlier the intervention, less is the damage done. So that can be done. So, and then after the screening, the child can be sent to a tertiary care center. So the behavioral intention and support should continue for these kind of activities. So when Dr. Avitoli told me this, so I was really excited about it, because I wanted this digital divide between the privileged people and the unprivileged people. So this has always been there. But considering the health scenario, now that National Health Mission has come up and Pradhan Mantri Ayush, this Arogya Yojana has come up. So the digital means have reached our primary health centers. So why not use that to reach those unprivileged section of the societies? Why not use that to screen the children at younger age for the developmental delays? So this is important when it comes to Indian context. Now, diversity in India is itself so huge, so large, that we need to cater to that also. So if we use the wrong tools at the wrong place, at the wrong zones, so that would give us a wrong assessment. And hence, again, we delay the intervention to the child. So when these points are catered to, will be good to go to reduce the digital divide, will be good to go to provide equity in terms of healthcare, equity in terms of interventions. So that is what we have to think of. And anthropologists can be the best people to intervene and develop such tools, because that is where our strength lies. So with that, I would thank you all once again, and thank you, Avitoli ma'am, for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Suniti. Thank you very much for that presentation. In fact, when you were speaking, I was thinking about Shubhangi Vaidya's work. Shubhangi Vaidya is a faculty at IGNOU, and she has actually done an autoethnography of raising an autistic child. And she's written about, autism and the urban family in India. So that's her book. It came out in 2016, and it was published by Springer. And in this book, Shubhangi is raising a lot of questions, especially the questions which are actually very difficult to deal. So what happens to an autistic person after the parents are gone? How they bond with their siblings, how do they bond with their grandparents? How do they bond with people around them? So yeah, I think what you have talked is so meaningful in so many ways, and I think this discussion should be taken forward, and especially when we have digital technologies that when we can today digital technologies are available, when we have other technological interventions, how disability related experiences can be understood, and how the interventions can be made in made in such situations. So wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation. Anybody, if they have any observations, questions at this stage, they can raise. But we can also, take up the questions at the end of the discussion. Now, I invite Harmeet for her presentation. Harmeet is a PhD scholar in the Department of Anthropology, and she's working with Dr. Avitoli Zhimo. And Harmeet has been consistently working on children who come from unprivileged backgrounds. They live in slums of Delhi. And now I welcome Harmeet for her presentation. Harmeet, please.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me. I'll share my screen from the laptop. Just a second. Ma'am, can you please allow me to share my screen from the other account of mine? It is also named Harmeet.
Yes, done.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I will be, first of all, I like to introduce my work. My work is on studying the education of the migrant children here in Delhi. And though today I'll be talking more about their journey pre and post lockdown, but my field was entirely before the lockdown. It ended before the lockdown, but because I still have connection with them, so I have idea what is going on with the students after, during and post lockdown. So first of all, I'll introduce my population. Who are these migrant children here in Delhi? Now, these children have migrated to Delhi with their parents, and the parents, they all belong to a marginalized group. They are categorized under scheduled caste, and the name of the community is Meghwal community, and they belong to Pali district of Rajasthan. And all of them have migrated to Delhi for a better economic or better job opportunities. So let us start about the migrational journey of these children who have shifted to Delhi with their families. So how this study started, I observed that all of the house help which are coming in my area. I live at Patel Nagar in Delhi. So when I asked them, where are you all from? So all of them have given me different answers. Some are from Rajasthan, some are from Bihar, even very few are from West Bengal also. So, but all of them have given the same answer, that why they have shifted to Delhi is because Delhi, in terms of availing job opportunities, it is a better place, as it provide high pay as compared to their home state. So all of them have adopted migration as a tool to overcome economic problem. But definitely migration is not only linked with the economic process, and as it involves other socio-cultural changes in the society. And one of that change I'll be discussing here about is its linkages with the migration or with the education of these migrant students who have shifted here. Yeah. This was very clear from my field that the every society like this, the Meghwal community, that now it is clear to them that education is an effective instrument for the mobility of their children, and they understand that it is only the education which can bring the social, economic and political transformation of the children. So knowing the importance of formal education, our country, the Constitution of India, has given a right to its children, which are in the age group of 6 to 14 years of age, to provide them free and compulsory education. But to avail this free education, the child has to take admission in a government school, which may be run by a state or a central government. And these school will they are made to provide education free of cost to these students. Now, through this talk, I will be discussing. I have visited to one school, but I have experiences of the teachers from the other school as well. Now, how the journey is happening around the pandemic. So before I start with what happened during the lockdown and after the lockdown, I'll just give a brief introduction, brief just like how was the school before the lockdown. So I'll be sharing the routine of these children who used to go to the school. So they go to the school, and the school starts at 7:40. The first thing in the school that happened, which I also witnessed, is the assembly, because it is it makes the child connected. It brings moral development in the child. Now schools start at 8 p.m. with the assembly, and from 8 to 8:20 assembly used to take place. Now in the assembly they used to have a recorded tape of the prayer of Vande Mataram, community song, national song. Then the thought of the day is shared by any of the student with all of the other students which are there in the auditorium. After that, the uniform was checked, and then student march back to their classes. They used to have total 8 periods in the school, and each period was of 40 minutes. And for the first period is usually of the class teacher, who used to take the attendance and mark the attendance online. And after 4 period, they used to have a recess where the student can have their lunch, and it lasts for 20 minutes. And every teacher and every class used to have timetable, and while making the timetable, it was kept in the mind that every subject should be dealt every day. And every day one period was kept for computer aided learning, where these subjects were, the student used to learn these subjects with the help of computers. And at the along with this, there is always stress upon co-curricular activities like sports, like yoga, music, drawing, etc. So yeah so there is nothing written on my slide. This is just the content. But yes, definitely I'll be sharing some visuals from the field. So
Harmeet, but your slide is not moving. Are you trying to show us something?
Can you see? No. Just a second, sir.
So, Harmeet, we can see the first page only.
Only, okay.
Yeah.
Can you see the content page?
Yes, Harmeet, yes.
Okay, so I am right now. I am talking about the second portion, that is before lockdown. How was the routine of the children?
Okay, great.
Okay, so I was talking about the co-curricular activities, which I will be showing at last in the visuals from the field. There was always a stress upon sports, yoga, music, drawing. And at last 2 p.m. the school used to disperse, and the total duration of the school becomes 6 hours. uh, and for 6 hours students were used to be physically present at the school, but this was all before pandemic. Now the next two parts which are important for my presentation, that is how their formal education went on during the lockdown and post lockdown. Now to uh, tell about this, I had few telephonic conversation with the parents and the teacher. Unluckily, I could not talk to the student, so their voices is not here. But what were the perspective of the parents and teacher regarding the learning of the student during lockdown? I'll be sharing this. So first, I'll be talking about parents' voice during the lockdown. So one of my key respondent, her name is Lakshmi. She helped me a lot in my study. She has 3 children, and she shared that now, currently also, now she has permanently moved back to Rajasthan because during lockdown day, both she and her husband lost their job, and because they didn't have a house in Delhi. So comparing to village, Delhi was an expensive place to live. So they uh, shifted back to their village. Uh, and the Lakshmi shares here that she is having 2 smartphones, but 3 kids, and all 3 are school going. Before moving, all 3 of them were studying in the government school here in Delhi, which was near to their area. So Lakshmi reported me that because she had only 2 smartphones, the study of one child was always compromised during the lockdown. And she further added that recently she has visited back to Delhi just to get the passing certificate and report card of her children, so that she can get her children admitted to the schools at village, because as of now she says she can't afford and do not even intend to come back to Delhi. Now from this I'll go back to my field days, when people used to tell me that in their villages secondary school, that is the school from 6 to 8 class, they were usually away from their houses, so it was not possible for them to send their children to those schools. Now a situation has come where they are compelled to go back to that village, and obviously the school is still that far away. Now the question arises, now will they be again sending their children far away, or the children are going to drop out? So this was my first observation. Now second is a different case. She is Manju. She is also working as a house help in my area now, and she belongs to this community. She said she has not moved back to Rajasthan because she has her own house here in Delhi, so she don't have to pay the rent. So she managed with her saving during the lockdown. But her concern regarding the education learning of the children is completely different as compared to Lakshmi. She told that before lockdown, she used to send her children to the tuitions so that they can revise what they have learned in at the school. But now, because she do not have her job anymore, and so she could not afford the tuition, and also during the lockdown days, due to precaution reason, she can't send them to the tuitions. So she made it sure that both her kids are having the phone and attending the classes online. But now she is worried that whether they are understanding anything, as the help from the tuition is no more available. Okay. So the third concern, which is told my Alison ma'am also, that many of these marginalized people who have actually come to Delhi for economic opportunities, and now they have lost their job, many of them were in the same position, that it was not possible for them to recharge their phone with the data pack, so that online learning was hampered in these cases. Last from the parent voices is Mohan. He's a father of a child who's working, who is studying in these school, and he used to work as a construction labor when he was here in Delhi. Now he said he has returned to village during the lockdown, and he got work in the Manrega scheme there in the village. But because he is traveling far away, so he cannot keep his phone at home. Now this inability of not able to leave his phone at home is preventing his child from attending these online classes. So from these different voices, my inference was that though the government is taking initiative, and the teachers told me that they are giving them online lectures, PDFs were shared, but due to economic problem or due to not having devices, the as Alison ma'am shared, due to digital disparity, the learning is hampered. Now next, I would like to share teachers' perspective. What was their observation during the lockdown? The teachers, I would not be naming them, but many of them have told me that they have used Google Meet to teach during these lockdown days, but they told that the attendance was very, very low, and the reason is the same, because they also know that these children cannot afford the data packs, or some may do not have devices, some may don't have the device at the right time. So the teacher took the effort to record the lecture and send, so that if the student is having phone at some other time, so they can share. But as ma'am was saying, that face to face interaction was not possible, on the spot question answer sessions was not possible for these students. Secondly, the teachers reported that some students who can easily afford the data packs. One of the teacher told me this. It sounds interesting, but the student don't want to spend the data pack it on the classes, as they want. If they spend it on the class, then they won't be able to use the data pack for their entertainment later. She also, the student till class 8th know that the teachers cannot fail them because of the no detention policy. So teacher say that they have observed that these students take their classes very lightly, and may or may not attend on their own will. She further added that some students had definitely gone back to their home, so they are not making any excuses, but now they are returning back. And after reopening of the schools, they have started physically attending. So initially when I was going through this, making this presentation, I was thinking that these migrant students, if they have gone back and not returned, so many cases will be of dropout. But I have confirmed it from 2 to 3 teachers, and all of them has said that out of 360, one of the teacher told me, out of 360, all of the students have came back, only 7 didn't return. So that point, that hypothesis which I was making in my mind, that they will not return back or they will drop, nothing nothing like that has happened at a large scale. The next, which a teacher told me, that there was a time when she used to tell the parents of the children to keep the mobile or such devices away from the children, so that they don't get distracted. But now this time has come that she has herself told many parents that if they can afford, please buy a phone for your child so that they can attend classes. Now after lockdown, the same teacher's concern is that how to keep those students away from the phone, because now almost all students, especially the senior secondary one, they have access to these smartphones, which is a major cause of distraction in their studies now. And she also reported that after reopening of the school, she has got many students with the smartphone bringing to their classes at the school. So new concerns are coming up after this. Next, which one of the teacher observed, that the parents, if they have one phone and 2 children at home, one of them is, and supposingly one of them is studying in a private school, and the people of this community, I would like to mention here, the people of this community prefer private school till class 5th, and after that, because it is costlier to afford the education, they shift their children to government school. So for example, if a child is studying in a private school and the other is studying in a government school, and they have only one device to share, so they will give that device to the one who is studying in a private school and not to the government school. The possible reason for this is that the government school has this policy of no detention policy. So the parents are also lenient that whether you attend or not, you will be promoted to next class. Lastly, during my visit to the school, to this area, at that time, I found it very positive among the people that they want to send their daughters to the school because they understand the importance of education. But during pandemic, if the same situation like before arised, one phone, and they have 2 children, one is son and the other is daughter, so the device will be shared with the son for the classes and not with the daughter. So a gender dimension also came up with this. So these were the perspective which happened during the lockdown. Post lockdown, the school have reopened, and secondary classes are going thrice a week, and senior secondary, they are going every day. And so I have already told that most of the students have came back. Now the schools are using proper safety measure, mask and social distancing, and they are taking their classes, and though the class is divided into 2 groups, and a teacher may have to repeat the lecture twice, but they are managing well. Before I conclude, I would like to show the visual from the field before and after lockdown. Okay. Can you see this? This is a photograph. This is taken by me when I used to visit the field. The school.
Harmeet, I can't see anything. I don't know whether others can.
Okay.
It's blank.
Now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so they are the student gather in the school hall for a farewell party. The function did not started yet, so they have just gathered here. Now this is a pre-lockdown situation. They all are gathered having good gala time, talking to each other, no distancing. And this is because I said that co-curricular activities take place all the time in at the school. So this is tree plantation drive. It is an activity of the Eco Club. Now, Deepavali celebration. So it is an activity performed by 6th to 8th class of student to decorate the diyas. And now, post lockdown situation, students are sitting the classroom arrangement one per bench and with their mask on. They are studying with again social distancing, mask, and a new normal, like wearing a mask. This is all a new normal, and they have learned to adapt it in their school lives also. Now, this is from this Diwali. A teacher shared this with me. The students are making rangoli, but the mask with the mask on. So from here, I'll conclude that though everybody, either rich or poor, they have faced a tough time during lockdown, but things like education didn't lose their importance. Definitely the learning of these students, especially these marginalized students, was compromised because of the economic reason, as mentioned before and as mentioned by ma'am also. But now the question arises, how will the parents and teacher control these children from using these devices, which once they had given themselves for attending the classes? Not only these devices are affecting their mental health, eyesight, etc., but these devices are capable of sharing vast information which may or may not be harmful for the children, and it is a cause of concern if it is harmful for the children. Also, there are many children during these 2 years who have never seen a school, and they have started their educational journey through online learning. Now, how the question arises, how are these kids going to cope up once again when the actual school will start? Will they face any problem in socializing or not? And how are their emotions going to develop? Now, these were the few questions which I could relate with Alison ma'am. She was also talking about this. So I would not say that I am ending my presentation, but my presentation again start with few questions that how it is going to be in the future next 2 years for these kids. Thank you. I'll thank Department of Anthropology for organizing this workshop, and my special thanks to Ma'am Avitoli, who is always motivating and encouraging me to have such kind of presentations. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harmeet. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think that presentation was so close to what we all are going through as parents. And we keep sharing. In fact, I mean, when you were, talking about your your observations about this community, I was thinking about my own colleagues. Dr. Kennedy is here, and we keep on sharing. Dr. Avitoli, also, ma'am was Saraswati ma'am was telling about her granddaughter who's in Hyderabad, and now after COVID, from last month, she started going to the school. She's 3 years old, and she's in a preschool, and she goes to school once in a week. So I mean that, you know, slowly and gradually, how I mean, it's a tough time for teachers as well as parents, and obviously emotionally very, very traumatic for kids also. That also, I think during as we were coming to the department, a lot of other observations were being shared. For example, Dr. Chandel was telling about one of the, I mean, she had a very interesting observation about children who were attending the school for the very first time. So, I mean, children who have never been to school, how they were not taking teachers seriously. So they were not even listening to what they were saying. They thought they were watching another video, and they did not know how to interact with the video. So it was pretty difficult for them to, you know, get used to. And also they did not know how to respect a teacher, because in a pre-nurse, even in pre-nursery, I remember when my elder one was, I mean, my elder one did not go to a preschool, but when my younger one was going to a preschool like 3 years back, in first few weeks, she learned that art of respecting the teachers. It was so quick that, you know, she started obliging and also, you know, listening to them. So I think you have brought in very, very nuanced observations from the field, and thank you so much for sharing those. Again, you know, I think we are running behind the schedule, but Dr. Avitoli has assured me that we have time. So I'm moving to next presentation.
So before I leave, thank you so much for chairing the session and correlating with my observation. Thank you so much, sir.
No problem. Yeah, so now I invite Neha. Neha is again our research scholar from the department. She's working with Dr. Kennedy, and Neha shall be talking to us. Again, you know, she'll be taking us to students and their education. Over to you, Neha. Thank you.
Good evening, sir, teachers, all the teachers present over here. Thank you so much for giving me this chance of presenting over here. I am just sharing my screen. I think I'll be able to, just a minute. Yes. The topic of my today's presentation, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, Neha, you are.
Yeah. The topic of my today's presentation is problems of education in slums of Nandanagari, Delhi. In Delhi, there's one slum, Simapuri. It has 4 divisions, and Nandanagari is one of the 4 slums. I have chosen this by random selection methods because it is a huge area, Simapuri. There were 4 divisions. I randomly, by random selection method, I picked Nandanagari. Today, I will be talking about slum education and its 4 broad perspectives like pre-COVID scenario, lockdown scenario, online school, and offline school. If we talk about slum and education, the major thing which comes up in our minds is what is a slum? Because there are plenty of definitions of a slum. So to which definition should we adhere ourselves? So in our country also, we have plenty of definitions, like each and every state has its own definition. Even the census has its own definition, NSSO has its own definition. I have chosen 2 definitions, one given by United Nations and the second one given by Delhi government. So I will give a short, brief explanation of the definition as it's a very long one. Slums. Here, there are certain characteristic features which UN has provided on the basis of what, on the basis of which slum is defined, like the physical services, density, social and capital requirements like lack of basic services, inadequate building structures, substandard housing conditions, overcrowding and high density, unhealthy living condition and hazardous locations, indefinite tenure, irregular or informal settlements, poverty and social exclusion. These are the basic parameters on which Islam has been defined by United Nations. Now, slum definition adopted at the state level. State level means Delhi as a state, because my universe of study is Delhi. According to the postulates of the Slum Act of the respective states, the government defines slums differently. They do not follow NSSO and RGI as their definition is based on the legal grounds. So here, according to the Delhi government, the parameters to define slums are mainly universal, like poor housing conditions, overcrowding, unhealthy environment, garbage disposal problem, poor sanitary and drinking water facilities, common or no toilets, and etc. And now the question arises, what is the need of education in slums? How is education, basically formal education, going to help the slum people? As we all know, slum people are deprived in terms of money, in terms of social things, in terms of the living standards. So it is education. As in our country, we get jobs on the basis of our qualifications. If the people would be educated, they will be able to get proper jobs and will be able to take them out of their current poverty-stricken situations. Education, formal education always doesn't mean that everybody will get job, but at least it makes people aware of the surroundings, more aware of what they can do, and many vocational streams are also being opened by the government of India to make them out of the poverty-stricken situations. Now, the third point is perception of education. What is the perception of education of the slum residents? What do they perceive of education in their own terms? These days, as per my research is concerned, the slum residents have become quite aware about the outcomes of educating their children. As some of the parents told me, we are living in such situations, we are running rickshaw, yeah, we are doing the labor work, but we don't want our children to do the same. That is why we are sending them to the school. And mainly the parents send their children to the government schools because it is not easy for them to make out money for private schools. Private schools are quite costly according to them, and even they are as per different studies. Theoretical background. For the current study, I have used classical liberal theory of equal opportunities, as this theory affirms that every learner is born having some amount of ability to which some bigger margin is congenital and cannot be substantially altered. Therefore, education systems and structures ought to be structured in a manner that remove challenges of any kind, like social, economic, political, geographic, gender, etc., that prevent ingenious learners from lesser economic upbringings from taking full gain of innate talents, which fast track them to social promotion. The classical liberal theory insinuates the social mobility would be stimulated by equal opportunity of educational structures. According to this theory, education systems and structures ought to be planned with a view to eliminate obstacles of any form of, for instance, education delivered to marginalized and vulnerable students would accelerate them to social promotion, as education is a great equalizer. It will give them equal opportunities to come and I am working on problems of education in slums. Earlier in my MPhil, I have worked on formal education system among Pahadi Korwas of Chhattisgarh. So from there only I got the idea to work upon in slum areas, because the tribals, I'm sorry if I'm using any non-technical word, they are deprived in terms of all the facilities which we people have. Similarly, the slum people, despite living in Delhi state itself, they have all the exposure to the outer environment. They are also deprived in terms of money, or in terms of social facilities, or in terms of residence facilities. That is why they are also deprived, and they do not have the equal opportunity which we guys have. So it is education only which will help them come out of this situation. Now, institutions of formal education in slums. There are plenty of government-run schools in Nandanagri area which have different timings also. Some schools are co-educational, in which both boys and girls study together. There are certain specific, gender-specific schools, like in only single school only, the morning shift is for girls and the evening shift is for boys, and there are plenty of government run schools in the Nandanagri area. And governmental policies pre and post COVID times. Government of India has or special as my work is specifically on Delhi, so I've done a lot of things for the upliftment of education in Delhi area, like free textbooks and other supplies. This all is up till class primary education till 14 years of age, as we have free education, right to free education. Midday meal scheme is given. In midday meal scheme, this has helped. It started first in Tamil Nadu. This midday meal scheme, not only actually there are two things. Midday meal scheme was made with a view. First of all, the have proper facility of food at home, and to study properly, a child has to be healthy. And in midday scheme, proper healthy diet is given to the children so that they would be able to develop health wise also, so that they can study well. And also one of their problems of food would be catered at school only. This will be a motivation for them to come to the school. And then economic welfare is also provided, like some aids, scholarships are also given to the minorities like Muslim people, Buddhist people, so that it would help them to it will be a motivation for them to come to the school. This is all about pre-COVID era. After COVID, there was a question that since March 2020, online classes started. After the first wave struck, it was all where the online school classes would be started in every school, even in the government school. There were major problems faced. There were two major problems. One, all the teachers were not so technology friendly. They were not able to teach online. They were not able to run Google Meet and all this Zoom. So there was first need to train the teachers how you should teach in the online mode. And second problem which the teachers, parents and students faced was the children of the slum have small homes. They have only 1 or 2 rooms with large number of people living at only one place. So the place was not soundproof. Everybody was involved with their own course, and due to lockdown, everybody was at home. So it was very difficult for the children to attend the classes. Secondly, there were only one gadgets. If the gadget, even many of the children did not had any kind of mobile phones and all, smartphones rather, not mobile phones. Mobile phone they have because they have some very simple wala mobile phone, and some of the students had smartphones, but the smartphones were not so well equipped. They had very short memory, so they were not able to make up the Zoom classes or the Meet classes and store the data. So government of Delhi announced that they will start supplying as per under free right to free education till 14 years. They will supply smartphones to the children, gadgets to the children, and arrange some other methods like they will start like NGOs also. They will start taking help from the NGOs so that classes would be conducted in their locality by going over there. So this will start helping the children with the help of government and non-governmental organizations, because smartphones, it is a very this idea of supplying gadgets is at very preliminary stage, and it would not be possible for providing gadgets to all the children, because in one house only there are 5 or 6 children. So it will be very difficult to provide 5 and 6 mobile phones to each and every child at per home. There are several NGOs also working upon there. They are going there. They are helping these children by teaching them, by providing them even the gadgets also, like smartphones, like Smile Foundation, Ladli. It was very difficult for the slum dwellers to even have food, because lots and lots of people lost their jobs. In fact, many were infected with COVID-19, and many children lost their parents, either both of them or a single of them. So this also posed a mental problem to the children. pre-COVID scenario. Here I will be discussing three main broad phases, like challenges faced by the slum children 3 to 14 years, challenges faced by the slum teachers, challenges faced by the slum parents. First of all, I'll start up with challenges faced by the slum students. For this is pre-COVID scenario when there was no COVID-19. This research has been conducted on a sample set of 150 students of age 3 to 14 years. Most of them went to the schools at pre-COVID times, and a few of them were dropouts, and also there were a very few of them, like only there were 3 students who never attended school, and they were of age 5 to 6 years, because they were late in attending the schools. They went to Anganwadi, but they didn't enter into the formal education of 7th and 8th standard, and were not able to pass their classes regularly. The distance of the school from home, language barrier, no motivation from home, because the parents are not well educated. They needed certain help, and for which the parents were not ready, so they were not able to understand what was being taught at the school. Also, they were not very much interested into the studies. Two of them, I won't take their names, but they told me they want to build their careers in YouTubing and doing further other jobs, and there is nothing to do with the study. We are not interested in it, and we can do anything what we want, because it's only the matter of earning money. Now, the challenges faced by the slum teachers. The slum teachers told me there were certain challenges like language problem. Some of the children who were migrants mainly from Nepal, Bangladesh, they were not able to understand Hindi also properly. So it was difficult for them to teach them. They were not cooperating. They were not responding to what they were teaching. They were not attending the classes properly. And so it was not a dual thing. It was only one thing. The teachers were teaching and the students were not taking. This is according to the teachers, what they told me, what challenges they face. Secondly, the teachers are full of praises also for the children. Yes, some of the children are really, so they were appreciate something very good in their future. Now, challenges faced by slum parents. The slum parents, mother also helped father in earning. Mainly all the slum women were either the domestic workers or laborers at the construction site. They went early in the morning to the construction site or as a domestic help. So they were not able to look after the children. What are they doing? It is not just the matter of going to the school and coming back. It is the matter of what the children are from school, because they were not their children asked. Second was mainly the males were into alcoholism, after which they created tantrums at home, and this was not a good environment for the children to study. This was told me by the mothers. Third, there were plenty of children, so it unwillingly tha ye ki jo sabse bada child hai, he or she has to help the parents in upbringing of the second the further younger siblings, look after the household chores, so that the mother can go out and come back and have food, because it was not easy to make food and do every household chore before going to the work and coming back and doing the same things. Now comes the post-COVID scenario. What are the challenges faced by the slum students of this age? These children they did not have gadgets. Even if they had gadgets, they do not have proper money for internet connection, data plan, and also if they had, there were poor connections at their homes. Third, there were plenty of children, so they do not had equal opportunity of having the mobile phones, because it was said that give the phone to the elder siblings because their studies are more important. But what about the studies of the younger siblings? Are sitting over there listening to us or not? They are not making proper notes. They are scoring well in examinations because it is objective type, and we don't know how are they scoring such well. Even if we know the children, if we are teaching them since long, what is are they doing it by their own or cheating from somewhere? And now challenges faced by the slum
I can't hear Neha.
Parents
I
have
think
lost
there's some internet problem
their
from her
jobs.
side.
There is no money with them. And here for the economically weaker sections, gadget facilities for the economically weaker sections, training of teachers for conducting online classes, many channels like Doordarshan, change in the exam so that to help the economically weaker sections so that they can come up and join the mainstreams. Now, pre-COVID versus COVID times, every time the children, students and teachers had certain kind of problems, but the COVID times has always increased upon the problems, as they are not earlier, they do not have the access to school because of the language barriers or accessibility to school. Now they have still the schools are far away from them because they are not able to attend schools via the gadgets. They do not have money to buy gadgets and attend the classes, which is the main problem. At last, I would conclude the situation of education has worsened post-COVID. Parents are more reluctant now in sending children to schools. Online education is not feasible due to lack of resources. Dropout percentages has spiked. Lack of education will lead to further expansion of poverty in slum areas.
Yeah. Are you done, Neha?
Ji, sir. Wasn't I audible?
Yes, I think we sensed that you have stopped.
No. I was speaking continuously. Was my slide visible?
Yes, it was.
I was continuously speaking. I'm sorry, I didn't.
No problem. I think there was some internet issue. So we could hear most of what you said. No problem. Thank you very much, Neha, again for your observations from field. I think, yes, I mean, we've been hearing a lot of stories about, dropout. I mean, definitely, I think, again, I think a lot of what you have said is common with what Alison was trying to bring your attention to, the digital divide. Also with Harmeet's question. So again, thank you very much. So our next speaker, Janice, but then Janice will speak tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I think we are super late today. We are running late. So maybe, now I can request Dr. Avitoli to take over. It was a very, very enriching session, and I greatly enjoyed all the three presentations. Thank you very much, Suniti, Harmeet, and Neha. Thank you. Avi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be taking over from here, sir.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that all the participants are enjoying the lecture series. Firstly, I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Chakraverti Mahajan. Thank you, sir, for steering the panel discussion very actively. Moreover, it was a very engaging session. So thank you very much once again, sir. And also I thank Somen for rapporteuring the session. My name is Eche, Konyak, and currently I'm pursuing PhD in the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. I will be coordinating this session, and the rapporteur is Fatima, a PhD scholar in the same department. And I look forward to active participation of all the participants in this session as well. And the session's topic is titled Digital Education, Screening of Navyasara Jaiswal's film on Lockdown Education in Delhi. And the speaker is Dr. Alison Kahn. I believe that by now every one of us is familiar with who Alison ma'am is. So without any further ado, since we are lagging behind our schedule, I invite Alison ma'am to kindly take her time now. Please, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for those wonderful lectures that we've just heard. They were really on point, and I was fascinated to hear how your intensive studies are going on at the anthropology department and how important your work is. So I'm very, I would very much like to connect with you after so we can continue the discussions, and hopefully today as well. So I'd like to, I think I will introduce Navyasara, who is she is a young lady who got in touch with me during lockdown. Let me just introduce her. Navyasara Jaiswal is a 17-year-old student who is currently in her last year of school in Delhi. She attended an ethnographic workshop with me in the summer, and she combined her interest which were filmmaking and education, into a 35-minute documentary entitled COVID Classrooms. In the film, she explored the worsening education crisis of underprivileged children due to the pandemic through the study of two siblings, shedding light on the various difficulties of online learning. She intends to continue this passion by pursuing education in undergraduate studies. So this is a wonderful young lady that I met during lockdown, and here she is. Welcome, Navyasara. It was a pleasure to have you on the workshop during the summer, and you're the first person to complete their documentary. So she's always ahead of the game in many ways. So Navyasara, would you like to just introduce your documentary, and then we can just watch it? It's 35 minutes long, and I think it's just good to watch and then have some questions afterwards. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, go ahead, Navyasara.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Also, thank you so much for having me here today. I learned so much, and I'm so grateful to have this platform so that I can share my documentary and send this message to a wider audience. Just to introduce my documentary a bit, I think Alison basically covered everything. So while considerable data exists on the severe impact of COVID on education, there is still a paucity of studies that recorded actual classroom observation during the pandemic, which is why I decided to conduct this brief case study of two siblings from a lower income background and record their classroom interactions to understand how classrooms actually operate during the pandemic. So I did this over 4 months, and under an ethnographic film workshop hosted by Alison and the Anthropos India Foundation, I was able to combine my interests into this 35-minute film. And yeah, I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Navyasara. That's lovely. So we'll have questions afterwards. Dr. Zhimo, would you like to share the link on your host platform? Or whoever is in charge of this session. I sent the link earlier on. Is that okay? Otherwise I can do it. Thank you.
आपको ऑनलाइन स्कूल पसंद है या असली स्कूल पसंद है?
असली स्कूल।
क्यों?
क्योंकि ऑनलाइन में मज़ा नहीं आता।
मज़ा नहीं आता क्यों? ऐसे। बोल बात, जो भी बोलना है बोल।
It's been 1.5 years since schools around the world have been forced to close their doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to UNICEF, schools for more than 16 million children globally have been completely shut for most of the last academic year. As the death rate climbed, my school was quick to adapt to our rapidly changing world. I had all the support I could possibly need. Remote learning tools had been put in place, infrastructure and strategies on how me as a child of my school could learn in the most effective way possible. Along with all of this, I also had my family every step of the way. However, through it all, I couldn't help but wonder, if I had somehow not have access to any of this, none of the privileges I have access to simply because of circumstances I cannot control, how would I cope, was all that I could ask. Unfortunately, this hypothetical question of mine is but a reality for millions of children from low-income backgrounds in India. How are they coping? And how much worse has their educational crisis become? Plato believed that education was a means for both individual and social justice. To achieve social justice, he argues, we must all work in harmony. This, he opines, can be achieved by equal educational opportunities for all. Without this, we may see the emergence of a tyrannical society ran by unqualified people. The importance of education is nothing unheard of, which is why, now more than ever, people and governments are willing to invest in a quality education or educational opportunities and infrastructure for all. However, it is important to realize that ultimately, no matter how much you spend or theorize, it all boils down to what actually happens in the classroom. It is with this intention that I decided to examine an actual classroom to see how the learning is actually taking place amidst the COVID crisis. Over the next 30 minutes, I will be presenting a case study. A COVID classroom through the eyes of a 16-year-old right before you. This is a case study of a brother and a sister who, despite the COVID crisis and all the difficulties that came with it, try their best to keep their fire for learning alive. In order to conduct the study effectively, I decided to try and learn the fundamentals of and train myself in educational research. From my understanding, one of the most critical aspects of educational research, or research in general, is research ethics. The inherent need to respect people's data and privacy is especially relevant here when working with children. Which is why, even though I have taken the informed consent of both parents and children, I have chosen to keep their identities anonymous. I felt that perhaps their consent was tainted by the fact that they may have felt compelled to do so. Furthermore, I believe that their identities are irrelevant in comparison to their story, as it is a story shared by millions of children all around the world. I have thus given them new names to protect their identity. I have named the girl Asha, which means hope in Hindi. This represents the hope that is still there despite all of the difficulties that have come in their educational journey. The boy I've named Bala, which represents the strength that they have and will need in their educational journey. In his thesis, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire states that to be educated is to escape from the necrophilic clutches of oppression. He continues this line of thought by saying that to question is what humanizes us. On the first day of recording, I was eager to see the power of education at first hand. With excitement and slight apprehension, I walked up the stairs. Their home consisted of one room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. Whatever was overflowing in terms of this household was neatly compartmentalized into the carry bags that hung off the wall, and of course, there was one small window to see the outside world. And in the midst of it all was a classroom that many people would not be able to recognize. Whilst considering online learning, our focus is fixated on the mobile rather than the learning environment that it rests in. Friedrich Vogel constantly stressed on the learning environment of a child, stating that it should be stimulating and also allowed the child to learn from their experiences. The unconventional setting of this house starkly contrasts that of an evening playing outside with friends. This affects not only a child's learning, but also happiness. To make matters worse, I discovered that unregulated construction had been going on right outside the building, further disrupting learning.
देखो केरला का दूसरा नाम है गॉड्स ओन कंट्री. गॉड्स मतलब भगवान. यहाँ पे बोलते हैं कि भगवान बसते हैं. सबको सुनाई दे रहा है?
Kerala is a state in the southernmost part of India. It is known for its tranquility, and because of its natural beauty, it is also known as God's own country. Today, the children are learning about Kerala. Despite the class starting on a good note, with the teacher describing the idyllic, calming nature of Kerala, there soon is an opposing atmosphere in the classroom.
आपकी तुरंत कोई क्लास साइंस की बुक नहीं है. आप क्लास ज्वाइन कीजिए जल्दी से. आपकी तुरंत आ गए हो? सबको सुनाई दे रहा है? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही. मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही. बोलो मैम क्या बोल रही हैं? मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही. मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
The children waited patiently for the teacher to come back. However, due to internet problems, she wasn't able to join. And thus, 15 minutes of a 30-minute class were gone.
Okay, now I am showing you how Kerala is. चलो मेरी गलती है. मैंने आप लोगों को केरला अभी दिखाती हूँ.
The teacher apologizes and continues on with her lesson. But the lesson is hit with another roadblock. Some students are still unable to hear what the teacher has to say about Kerala.
सबसे ज़्यादा लोकप्रिय जगह है केरला. केरला में सबसे ज़्यादा नारियल का पौधा और पानी मिलता है.
In a way, this class can be considered a microcosm of the various challenges posed by COVID. What deeply disturbed me was the fact that it was a possibility that these children weren't learning anything in a day. In this scene, we can see Bala diligently studying. However, what is not shown is Asha waiting patiently for her turn to learn. I was incredibly surprised to see that only one mobile was shared between the two children, causing both of them to miss critical lessons in their education. It is also worthy to note that it is the mother's mobile that is being used and not the father's, even though both of them are out of the house working. This subtle difference is also reflected in the children's learning, with Asha's negligence and Bala's priority. India has among the world's highest gender gap in access to technology. Only 21% of women in India are mobile internet users, in contrast to the 42% of men who do. The subtle difference of priority in Asha and Bala's home might not be an explicit decision, but it is without a doubt that the COVID pandemic is inducing and further increasing gender disparity among low-income families.
Nena, are you in the class?
According to the National Statistical Office, only 38.7% people in India have completed secondary school or higher education. This is an incredibly low number. To keep children in school, the government has attempted to incentivize schooling through schemes such as the midday meal, where students are served lunch free of cost, or schemes where they build separate toilets for girls. All these programs aim to incentivize children to go to school. However, with the COVID-19 pandemic, schooling infrastructure has collapsed, leaving the burden of motivation on the parents, many of whom are working to sustain their family. As mentioned before, as the class is starting for the day, children are failing to show up, leaving the burden also on the teachers. As the class goes by, it becomes apparent that this is not anything new. To accurately take attendance, the teacher then asks her student to put on their camera to ensure that they're really there. Fortunately, the teacher seems to be very enthusiastic about teaching her kids about why they should come to class. Despite the adversities, the teacher does not give up. Despite the many anecdotal evidences against teachers in India, we can clearly see that this teacher is making an effort to praise their good work. However, whatever attempts the teacher has to encourage her children are undermined by the classroom setting.
राशन के लिए नाम दे रही हूँ कि इसको राशन मिले उसको राशन मिले। आप थोड़ी फ्री करोगे तो मैं कैसे आप लोगों को आगे लेके जाऊँ? ओके बाय 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 जाओ क्लास में बाय बाय बाय।
The school day came to an end. However, I couldn't help but notice a lack of laughter, banter, giggles and note passing between friends, or reunions with parents. It all seemed rather anticlimactic. The end of school has always been something to look forward to, a time where you can meet with your friends and go somewhere. But when the call ended and the voices fade, it seemed as though it had never happened at all. When I was observing the classroom of the children, I was reminded of my own experience with online education. Like most students, remote learning had taken a toll on me. I felt isolated, alone, and unable to learn or focus as well as I did before. It hit me that I would probably be having my final year of school inside the four walls of my room. As I was struggling, I realized that if I myself was struggling so much, how much would others be who have it worse than me? This project thus served almost as my strength, giving me a purpose amidst all the chaos around me.
We start to tell stories from nursery school until the end of our life. We tell stories about what we do.
Since then, I have diverted all my energy into making this documentary possible. As we go back to the classroom, we see the problems are still present. Unregulated construction is still affecting the children's learning. The mobile phone that the children share keeps getting calls and notifications. And voices keep cutting out due to the internet.
Yes, ma'am.
And children are still struggling to join the class.
Good morning, ma'am. मैं लेट हो गई क्यों? मैं बाइक से आ रही थी इसलिए क्योंकि मैं किसी और के घर में थी यहाँ पर नहीं थी।
A reward system used in class is essential in encouraging children to learn. As the various challenges continued, Bala faced a problem that even though he answered correctly, his answer was not heard. This can be especially demotivating for children, which could potentially cause an increase in dropout rates.
RALA इससे क्या वर्ड बनाएंगे सही वर्ड बताओ कौन बताएगा जल्दी से बताओ
अलार्म
लगेगा हम कैसे जी बताइए नेक्स्ट क्या होगा इसका आंसर बताओ मुझे वेरी गुड
आप क्या बच्चों का पढ़ाई में मदद कर पाते हैं या
नहीं बिल्कुल मदद नहीं कर पाते.
Research from the National Coalition for Parent Involvement in Education shares that, no matter their income or background, students with involved parents are more likely to have higher grades and test scores, attend school regularly, have better social skills, and show improved behavior and adapt well to school. However, because of the fact that both the mother and father are out of the house for most of the day to work, parental engagement is jeopardized. Additionally, leaving children with a mobile phone unattended can bring many risks not only in their education but also in their development.
तो मैं काम करती हूँ, बच्चे कई बार मोबाइल देखते हैं, क्लास मिस करते, पढ़ाई नहीं करते, तो दिक्कत आ रही है। जो सामने में फेस टू फेस पढ़ाई होता है वो सही होता है ना, ऑनलाइन में तो बच्चे थोड़ा ज़्यादा वो कर लेते हैं, ढंग से पढ़ नहीं पाते, चलो मम्मी नहीं है पापा नहीं है, मोबाइल देख लेते हैं।
She is very concerned about her children's education.
बच्चों को तो पढ़ाना चाहिए, हम लोग नहीं पढ़े तो अभी तो एहसास हो रहे, जो नहीं पढ़े तो ये दिन देखना पड़ रहा है, लेकिन मैं कोशिश करके पढ़ाऊंगी बच्चों को, लाइफ बनने के लिए पढ़ाई बहुत ज़रूरी है।
Though the mother knows the importance of education, she gets a bit uncomfortable when asked about her own. और आपने पढ़ाई की है?
मैं नहीं, हाँ पढ़ाई 6 तक की है।
और क्यों छोड़ी आपने पढ़ाई?
क्योंकि कम उम्र में मेरी शादी हो गई थी, तो फिर इसीलिए ससुराल वाले पढ़ने नहीं दिए, छुड़ा दिए।
और आपकी शादी कब हुई थी?
मैं उस टाइम 13-14 के आसपास थी।
और बच्चे कौन से स्कूल जाते हैं? The name of the school has been removed for the family's privacy. आपके हिसाब से स्कूल कैसा है?
स्कूल तो बहुत अच्छा है, टीचर देखभाल करते हैं, बच्चे को अच्छे से पढ़ाते लिखाते हैं, टाइम बाय टाइम सब कुछ करते हैं।
Asha and Bala's mother is very invested in her children's education, knowing their exact timings of school and subjects. In fact, as mentioned before, even the mobile the children use is hers.
टाइम होता था, मतलब 7:30 बजे यहाँ से निकलते थे, 8 बजे क्लास, 1 बजे करेक्ट 1:05 में छुट्टी हो जाते थे। बाकी उसी में इंग्लिश, मैथ, हिंदी सबका सब्जेक्ट अलग अलग, सबकी क्लास अलग अलग, क्लास वही रहते थे पर टीचर सब अलग अलग जाते थे क्लास में।
Unlike their mother, their father never went to school. He, because of the economic pressure, has to stay outside the house for most of the day, which means that he left the educational concerns largely with the mother. क्या आप बच्चों का पढ़ाई में मदद कर पाते हैं या?
जी मैं तो नहीं कर पाता हूँ, वही डांटता हूँ जो पढ़ो बैठो।
तो आप कब जाते हो काम पे और कब वापस आते हो?
मैं 9 साढ़े 8 बजे निकल जाता हूँ।
और वापस कब आते हो?
वापस कभी बहुत कम 6 बजे तक आता हूँ, नहीं तो 9 बजे ही आता हूँ रात।
As the children's school day starts, the father has to leave for work. Despite being unable to be there, he still wants his children to be educated. आपने पढ़ाई की है?
नहीं पढ़ाई नहीं, पढ़ाने मुझे बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ता है। वो पढ़ेंगे कुछ करेंगे, मुझे बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है नहीं पढ़ा तो।
और आपका काम क्या है?
काम है टाइल्स का। काम का यही नुकसान हुआ, जो कोरोना हो गया तो बहुत लोग घर चले गए और उसके लिए फिर काम धाम बंद हो गया, फिर बीच में लॉकडाउन हो गया, काम काज चलाने। बच्चे स्कूल जाते रहते हैं तो वहाँ अच्छे पढ़ते लिखते हैं, ये ऑनलाइन पे उतना बच्चों को समझ में नहीं पाते हैं कभी।
As the children continued to study, the COVID situation in Delhi had gotten worse.
What we're seeing in India, it's terrifying, isn't it?
These are terrible scenes from India, and they're really showing us all what this virus can do if it takes off.
With the knowledge that school wasn't going to be opening anytime soon, morale was low at home. As Asha prepares for her class, Bala helps his sister log in. Today, Asha has a lesson about health and safety.
Good morning. मैम जो कल आपने फर्स्ट एड वाला कराया था मैम,
उसके फोटो खींच के हमारे फोन में भेज सकते हैं।
Technical issues arise, but people continue to power through.
मेरा हो गया।
ठीक है बेटा।
Asha sincerely does her work. As Bala waits outside. Despite the various disturbances, Asha copies down each word with dedication.
जी नुसरत कोई टाइम है या नहीं है बेटा? मैं टाइम नहीं देखा था। इतनी लेट आओगे ना अगर क्लास में, मैंने एब्सेंट लगा दिया आपसे। कभी कभी रीजन होता है किसी का जेन्युइन वो समझ में आता है, लेकिन हर बार का नहीं होता ना ऐसे।
Attendance seems to be a continuing problem. When Asha's class finishes, it is now Bala's turn for studying. Over the past few weeks, I've recorded the various challenges that the students had faced during their online education. However, today, it was the first time that I got to see a good lesson. A lesson where I felt the children had learned something and had been rewarded for their good work. Today, Bala was learning maths. The children started to do some word problems.
Okay, so इतने birds were sitting in a tree. एक पेड़ में 2948 प्लस करते हैं।
मैम इसका आंसर है 6015।
ओके वेरी गुड, मैं अभी देखती हूँ। किसने बोला 60 होगा? सॉरी 7 नहीं 6 होगा। सॉरी बेटा।
यस मैम।
6015।
यस मैम।
वेरी गुड। नाउ लास्ट लाइन में लिखो।
As Bala sat with a smile on his face, the problems of the classroom still persisted.
Very good morning. रोहन इतना लेट क्यों?
मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
हेलो, किसको आवाज नहीं आ रही है? बेटा आपका नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है। आपका नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है और दूसरे बच्चों को आ रहा है मेरी आवाज?
यस मैम।
अगर एक बच्चे को नहीं आ रहा है उसका मतलब है नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम।
आप रेडी हो?
हाँ।
आप कितने साल के हो?
11 years। 9।
आपका फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट कौन सा है?
मेरा फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट इंग्लिश।
आप बड़े होके आप क्या बनना चाहते हो?
बड़े होके मैं डॉक्टर।
क्यों बनना चाहते हो? ऐसे
क्योंकि मुझे हमेशा से डॉक्टर बनना ही पसंद था।
और स्कूल कितने बजे लगता है?
ऑनलाइन या असली?
When taking their interviews, I noticed that Asha and Bala refer to physical school as Asli school. This could possibly suggest that they don't consider online school as real at all.
ऑनलाइन और असली, आप पहले ऑनलाइन कर।
ऑनलाइन तो 9 बजे स्टार्ट हो जाता है। 9 से मेरा 9:30 होता है। 9 से 9:30 मैथ होता है। उसके बाद 9:30 से 10 इंग्लिश होता है। थर्सडे और फ्राइडे साइंस और हिंदी क्लास होता है।
अच्छा, और बस ये दोनों ही क्लास होते हैं या और भी होता है?
बस ये दोनों।
His answer meant that each child was learning for only 1 hour a day, half an hour for each class.
आपको ऑनलाइन स्कूल पसंद है या असली स्कूल पसंद है?
असली स्कूल पसंद है।
असली स्कूल।
क्यों?
क्योंकि ऑनलाइन में मज़ा नहीं आता।
क्योंकि असली स्कूल में सामने पढ़ाई होता है, ऑनलाइन स्कूल में दूर से पढ़ाई होता है।
असली स्कूल इसलिए पसंद क्योंकि वहाँ पे फ्रेंड्स भी होते हैं।
लंबे समय से होता है 7 से 1 बजे और ऑनलाइन स्कूल सिर्फ 2 घंटे पे होते हैं, तो क्यों ऐसा क्यों?
ऑनलाइन में ज़्यादा सब्जेक्ट नहीं हो पाते।
It seemed to me that either child was not missing classes, but rather the school did not host that many classes.
क्या आपके ऑनलाइन टेस्ट होते हैं?
हाँ, होते हैं।
और क्या कब होते हैं और किस पे होते हैं?
वैसे तो एग्ज़ाम हमारा जुलाई में होगा इस बार, लेकिन पहले मार्च में होते थे। टेस्ट जैसे कि मैम ने पढ़ा दिया कुछ साइंस का एक चैप्टर, तो उनका टेस्ट लेते।
और कैसे लेते हैं?
वो व्हाट्सएप में मैसेज कर देते हैं टेस्ट का पेपर।
आपके हिसाब से पढ़ाई करना क्यों ज़रूरी है?
क्योंकि बड़े होके कुछ बनना है, टीचर नहीं बनना।
क्योंकि पढ़ाई करेंगे तभी कुछ बन पाएंगे, आगे बढ़ेंगे ज़िंदगी में।
एक फ़ोन होने से वजह से क्या मुश्किल आती है? आप क्लास मिस करते हो एक फ़ोन की वजह से?
नहीं, मेरा क्लास कभी कभी मिस हो जाता है नेटवर्क की वजह से। वैसे मेरा क्लास मैं कभी मिस नहीं करता।
कभी कभी अपने आप कट जाता है और कभी कभी हमारा आवाज़ नहीं जाता।
Over the last 2 months, I have delved into the world of 2 children. 2 children with hopes, dreams, aspirations just like me. Some may say that they are lucky to be educated at all in a country like India. To that, I say that statement is quite telling of our current educational system. A million questions have since buzzed through my head. Is it not a human right to have the means and capacity to be educated, to process the world around us to its full potential? While those who have resources and support may eventually insulate their educational journey and get back on track, this pandemic means that millions of children are now forced to fend for themselves. The realization of their aspirations now a bleak possibility. The pandemic has caused the whole world to collapse, including the classrooms that we consider holy. It is often the case that when a structure collapses, people are met with a surprise. A crack forms on the inside, then another, and eventually it collapses before we can even realize. This is the case with our current educational system. The structure is crumbling in the interiors before our classrooms truly crumble.
Hey. Hello. Hello. Well, it's can you hear me? It's hard to watch that without being upset, really, isn't it? Tell us about your story. Tell us how you feel.
Yeah, I did this over around 4 months. Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you crying?
It's so upsetting.
Yeah.
I think, when John Grierson was given the name, he was the father of documentary film. He sent people out into the UK in the 1930s, and he was hailed as, the father of filmmaking. But people neglected the fact that his sister, Ruby, went to the slums of London, and she started filming how people were living in the slums. And it was through her films that we reformed our housing policies in England and the UK. So it is through this kind of film, because you can only move people by showing people what is actually happening and imagining and creating empathy. And I think that you have created real empathy for those children. And, I think it's a really powerful film. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I mean, I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, but yeah, so, I mean, you're following it. I know you're not yet an anthropologist, but you're kind of on the way. And, there's, it was, what I like about your film, it was very poetic. I think you used a lot of visual imagery, and, you invested yourself into that narration. And that's where storytelling takes on, a very powerful, a very powerful impression, and gets through, because we see individuals. It's not just about the masses. You're using the individual. So let me open it up. Maybe Dr. Zhimo would like to open up the questions for Navyasara.
Eche, please, she's the coordinator, she will coordinate the session.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead. If anybody would like some questions, because I think now everybody's seen a lot, you've heard enough from me, so it's probably great that everybody else kind of joins in and maybe make some comments about the film, maybe about the methodology, anything that maybe Navyasara can answer.
Hello, am I audible? Firstly, thank you, Alison ma'am, for introducing the documentary to us. It was a very good one. And thank you, Navyasara, for introducing as well the documentary to the workshop, to the participants as a whole. It was a very inspiring documentary, I should say. It showcases the challenges posed by COVID and also the intricacies of online classes. It highlighted the gender disparity and the role and concerns of parents in enhancing quality education of their children. So thank you so much for bringing all those concepts in your documentary. Now, I'll open the virtual dice for any questions or comments, or if there's any queries to be raised, can you please put it down in the chat box? The participants are requested to please put their comments in the chat box.
Thank you, Harmeet. I see that you've written a very emotional documentary. I could relate to most of it, as my field was around students like these, exactly. Part of the, when we were discussing, how did the ethnographic film workshop enhance, because we're looking at how anthropology can be useful in raising these issues and, bringing them to a policy where that people will watch these films and maybe react and provide the basic human rights that you discuss in your documentary. Navyasara, tell us about what you learned most sort of from that ethnographic training.
Yeah, so ethnographic filmmaking is a method of anthropology, of recording data. And even though I don't have a background in anthropology, there was a lot of overlap between documentary making and ethnographic filmmaking. So one thing that I learned was the different modes of documentary making. One of which I used in while making this documentary was the participatory mode. So that means that I included some of my own perspective. Because I'm also going to school, I wanted to contrast what I'm going through as well as what the kids were going through as well. So that really enhanced whatever I was making. I also learned a lot about ethics and how you can deal with your subjects in a sensitive way. So of course we talked about consent and what all like the precautions you have to take before filming something like this, especially with children. And so I made sure to take their consent and to not record their faces and to keep their identities concealed. We also learned a lot about angles and how angles in filmmaking can communicate a power dynamic. So if I were to record somebody from above, it would kind of imply that I'm looking down on them. So I tried my best to keep it at an eye level so that I can not disrespect whoever I'm recording. I also learned about observation. Ethnographic films are slightly different because it's more observational. There's a lot more still shots. There's also audio, which Alison really stressed upon, the audio. And when you're making a film, especially a documentary, you don't have a storyboard going in. You only have a rough idea of what's going to happen because you don't know what you're going to find. So when you're editing it, you go on, you build your foundation on that audio, and then you add the visuals and the narration, and it comes together. So that's my main takeaways from the workshop, and it was hugely helpful in making this documentary. So yeah.
That's great. You've got some no, that's great. I'm really pleased that Dr. Zhimo will know my emphasis on sound, as I'm always talking about sound. And the sort of mantra is you can forgive a few poor visuals, but you can never forgive poor sound. It's because we're very sophisticated at watching audiovisual now. And I suppose one of those essential skills that we're trying to develop, and this is something that Dr. Zhimo and I are trying to integrate into anthropology through visual anthropology, is this idea that we must be good at constructing this audiovisual document, because these are very powerful documents as you've just shown. So let me see, there's some questions here. Did you come across any difficulty for obtaining consent from the parents, because you said it took you 4 months?
It took me 4 months to record, edit, and basically sit through all those classes and understand what I'm going to record. As per their consent, I asked them and they were more than happy to, but I still felt that they might have just said yes because they might have been compelled to, or they might have felt pressured. So I didn't show their faces. So that kind of overpassed any possible issue, I think.
Great. And are you going to do any follow-up with this?
So I might actually afterwards record what will happen in the future. I have been checking up on them and made sure that they have the resources and their Wi-Fi is working properly. So I've been in touch with them even after, yeah.
Yeah, it would be good to see how that pans out, and it's very difficult to sort of bring them into your, you can't sort of do the same for everybody, but you want to make sure that the people near you have at least the minimum that you can provide. It's a very difficult ethical question, especially in documentary film and ethnographic film, is how can you help? How do you help? Is it something you need to sort of go back and try to change in a wider perspective by your film, through your film. So these are ethical discussions that we're always talking about. So how do you affect the environment that you work in? And it's a very, very tricky one. So lots of people really happy with your film. Document has blown our minds. Thank you for creating this, stunned and inspired. Something we all thought deeper down, but the visual representation makes it more real. And it does. And it's that participant observation. And your narration is particularly wonderful because you're very understated. And I think this is a really interesting idea of the collaboration, that when you were speaking to the children, your manner was really appropriate. The way you speak is quiet and not authoritative. And if we look at, well, tomorrow we'll look at some of the Delhi 11 films of a few extracts, and it's really interesting. The children will only open up if they can feel they can trust people. And so you obviously earned that trust with your younger friends, that they obviously did want to, they didn't mind you being there while they were studying, and all these things. And it made me feel how mature that whole, and we always worry about our children not being able to cope, but you, a 16-year-old working with an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, you were creating a harmonious atmosphere, and that really inspires the older generation to say these kids they're okay, they're going to be fine. Lots of people have said, this is the lost generation because of COVID, and it's not at all. You're going to have, you're going to have actual strengths and resiliences that many of your former, other people who have come before, who have not come into these sorts of problems. I'm sure there is always something positive to take out of the situation. So, you have kind of inspired us, because your film is a positive reaction to something that could be seen in many cases as very, very negative. So, well, I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but I don't want to go well beyond our time. Navyasara, is there anything else you would like to add to your story?
Ma'am, we have one more question from Somen.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Somen, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the questions yourself, please? Somen?
Do you want to write it?
I think he has.
Yeah, it is in the chat box. If you can please go through it.
Yeah. So he's asking what my goal was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
So I think the entire purpose of this documentary was to get it to a wide audience, to spread awareness and hopefully reach people who can, make a difference and change policies so that we can change how we are educating our children. So I could have written a research paper, I could have written an article, but I specifically wanted to make it as a documentary because of the visual impact, as Alison was saying. The image is so powerful. It was actually used in the civil rights movement in the US to create impact. They would show photos of things that were often gruesome, but it really created an emotional response in people, which triggered change. So taking inspiration from that, I really wanted to make it into a documentary so that it would reach a wider audience, so that it's not only limited to people who can access research papers and academia. I wanted it to reach more people, and I wanted it to have more emotional impact so that these people are not just statistics, they're people, and so that you can humanize them and relate to them, and it just makes it more impactful. So my entire goal was to spread awareness and hopefully trigger some change. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Navyasara, for showing us your lovely film and for working so hard and for being so focused, because editing a film is also another big, it's a big job. Once you've done the field work, is very, it's a very time-consuming job to actually narrate and translate and subtitles and all of that. So I think you've learned some good digital skills for life, Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should. I'm finished for today. If anybody would like any more questions, please do ask. But we're going to talk again tomorrow, and some of these things will come up. And hope Navyasara maybe will be part of the audience and tomorrow as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening and watching.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and listening.
Thank you.
Okay, I once again thank Alison ma'am and Navya for the wonderful session that we had. It was quite enriching. And now we have come to the conclusion of day 1 of the workshop. So before ending, I request Dr. Avitoli Zhimo, the organizing secretary of the workshop, to say the final words. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Eche. Hello?
You're welcome.
Okay, you can hear me. Thanks, Eche and
Yes,
Fatima. Fatima was the rapporteur for this session. And this 35 minutes documentary, all of us, of course, were watching very silently, but I was also shedding some silent tears. It reminds me a lot of David McDougall's way of doing observational cinema, where he will take some shot and, there's just nothing in it, but we listen to the sound, we look at the still visuals, and we start contemplating, we start thinking many things, making use of all our senses. And I think the same feeling which we felt when we were watching David McDougall's film, I actually felt again this time when I was watching Navyasara's beautiful documentary. And even what is worth watching is her soothing tone. That's amazing. And and then not only that, when she was asking question, the same tone was being used, same tone, very soothing, very calming. It's like a tone that can even melt butter or something like that. It was very soothing to listen to. And it's not only me, but all those who have been watching this, they're all witness to that. And some of them have really complimented you. And coming from a 16-year-old, it's just pretty fascinating. We're just in awe of you, Navyasara. I think, but definitely a very, very bright future awaits you. Please continue to tell this kind of stories. Please continue to do that. This is very impactful, and you're very right. The visuals, the documentary that you have made, it will have more outreach than the thousands of pages that we are writing. Of course, it is not, of course, visual versus text as such, but still then very, very powerful. And the angles that you mentioned, wow, that was something else. And, because you were talking about the privilege and the not so privilege, and, the whole positionality, the whole question of positionality did not even arise because of your tone, because of the way you portrayed, because of the way you were looking at, the siblings. So that was very meticulously taken care of. We should also learn that trick from you. Thank you so much, Navyasara. Amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that you enjoyed it.
And if you don't mind, maybe in the next batch, we would like to, share your film to our students, for our new students, whoever, join the visual anthropology course, because there's so much to learn. And the sound, the deafening sound that was coming out when the online classes was going on, and your explanation as to the construction that was going on nearby, it all did so well that we felt as though we were there in the room with the kids. And me being more frustrated. They are attending class. I am watching from here, 4 or 5 months away, and I'm more frustrated than they are. I mean, they were very calm and very cool. I was the one who was getting frustrated, I guess. and being able to tug that kind of feeling, in the viewers. I mean, that's amazing. Well, I should not continue more than this now. Yes, Sarah, thank you so much. And Alison, ma'am, thank you for introducing this beautiful piece of work to us. I mean, we don't even have to discuss much because everything has been discussed in the film itself. But then it would be incomplete. I will never forgive myself if I don't say even a single word, especially to Navyasara. No, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We have, of course, we have ended and we are 30 minutes. We have prolonged 30 minutes. And I'm sure the participants will forgive us. But tomorrow we'll start sharp at 2 p.m. Today also we started at sharp at 2 p.m. But we wanted the PVC to come and at least say a few words. So we got prolonged a little bit. So please forgive us for the missed time management. We never do that actually. We always stick to time. But today exceptions can be made. That is why we have only registered participants who are genuinely interested in this workshop. It is not open to any Tom, Dick, and Harry who can join. It's not that. So we are an exclusive group who are genuinely interested in this topic, and we will. Sorry, sorry about that. Okay. Usually I'm not like that as a mom, but since I'm on live, so I have to just. She's wearing her rainbow skirt. Anyway, she's waiting for the meeting to be over so that she can use the Wi-Fi to play Minecraft. I have no idea what Minecraft is, but they want that. Tomorrow we'll start exactly at 2 p.m. and after the session with Dr. Alison Kahn, we have film screening. Some of our students in visual anthropology, BSc third year, they have done field work and they have made the short films like 7 minutes, 10 minutes. One is from West Bengal, one is from Kerala, one is from UP. So we will watch those films as well, and the students will also be attending. And Janice has done amazing ethnographic field work in one Naga village in Northeast, and she has done for the first time research on children, not a child's play. And she has used some really interesting anthropological methods to understand the children or growing up. They're in the small village located in a very challenging, very mountainous area, far away. So we will be hearing from Janice at 3 p.m. as well. And the last session will be, of course, taken by Dr. Alison Kahn, and she will be talking about very important issue, the mental children and mental health. So please do join us again at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Yes, Leia, thank you so much. Words giving doses. Okay, great. Thank you for your encouragement. I've been seeing your very supportive, very encouraging comments in the chat box. Thank you, Leia, and hope that you will join us again tomorrow at 2 p.m. So for today, it is Tata from our side. Dr. Aching Nikame, she's an associate professor in English Department, University of Delhi. She has been with us since 2 p.m. And she's a beautiful, a wonderful poetess, a poet. And her latest book has also come out. And thank you, Dr. Aching. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you will, join again tomorrow and be a part of the discussion as well. So thank you. Bye-bye from our side. All right. And good night to all the participants from India. And Alison, ma'am, good afternoon. Or maybe it's not even afternoon yet there.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It's lunchtime. Bye then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye. Everyone, take care. Bye-bye.